Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 54, Ghost from the Past. Aaron Idril was on his way to reach the Lionheart's Adventurers Academy. He was traveling in a carriage that had him, Jake, and Jack Sullivan as its patrons. It would take a little more than a week to reach the city of Lionhearts from the city of Ozen with the carriage's current speed. The trio would have to change their carriage services often across various cities en route in their journey. These cities would also serve as their resting spots. One of the cities en route was the city of Laurel. It would take a little more than 2 days for someone to travel from the city of Ozen to the city of Laurel at a decent pace. It was the same city that Nina had visited to get some of the herbs unavailable to her at that time. Even with a travel time of up to 2 days, the city of L'Oreal was considered to be one of the few major cities close to the city of Ozen. Because the cities were connected by many roadways, there were many colts and other types of rental transportation services available between them. The city of Laurel was especially famous within the potioneers communities for its rich availability of potion-related ingredients. The city cultivated a huge garden full of herbs, potion-related trees, and medicinal plants right in its center. Or to be precise, the city was formed around the already existing green space. Laurel was a preferred resting spot for people traveling to the city of Lionhearts from the city of Ozen and any other colonies nearby to it. During this time of the year, Aaron would see a lot of students who had either gotten into the LA through a reserved quota like them, or they could be someone who had passed the academy's harsh entrance exam. Of course, these students will travel with their guardians like Aaron and Jake with the latter's father. This will result in the creation of a fleet of carriages heading towards the Lionhearts from Laurel and other such gathering spots. This fleet would be organized and maintained by various carriage services working together. It was natural for Jack Sullivan to travel with the boys since he often had to travel across cities for his business. He also had a small shop in L'Oreal. A businessman like Jack would have his fingers dipped in all kinds of pies. Jack was also looking to open his business in the city of Lionhearts. He was going with his son and his son's friend to do a reckon regarding the same. It had already been more than 2 days since Aaron had started his journey. The carriage was closing in on Laurel. Jack asked Aaron to change the deafening silence spread in the carriage. "Tell me, Aaron. What are you aiming for during these academic years? And what are your plans?" Aaron stopped looking outside the carriage's window and focused his eyes on Jack. Jack had honed his instincts judging people for a living. Therefore when Aaron looked at him, felt like he was being stared at by a slumbering monster whose intentions weren't clear regarding its prey. "My aims. I wish to complete my academic years in peace and harmony. Maybe major in potion making and close-range combats. I wouldn't mind serving the kingdom if the position and benefits that come with it are good. But I will probably dabble in businesses related to potion as a side hustle." Aaron concluded like he had things figured out. Jack was expecting an unclear or far-fetched answer from a teenager. But he could never guess that the kid who gave off such laid-back vibes would have these ambitions. That's a good and flexible goal to have. But potion making and close combats usually don't gel together. You might want to rethink your goals when you get to the academy and spend a year there. Your specializations would start from the second academic year. So you'll have ample time to make a decision. "Jackie, what about you?" Jack turned his attention to his son. "I'm also thinking about majoring in potion. I'm not sure about the rest. I'll figure things out by next year after having a look at things in the academy." Jake Sullivan didn't experience the academy life like Aaron. So his approach to setting his aims was cautious. This was the most natural response a kid his age would have. It was Aaron who had acted differently. The trio discussed a few other things before they arrived at Laurel city gates. They entered the city soon after. Jack had already booked an inn for 3 of them. Jack and Jake would have one room to themselves. Aaron had insisted on having a dedicated room, so he was offered the other one. They were all tired after spending 2 days on the road and sleeping half-assedly on the ground during the night. So they all slept off as soon as they found their beds. Or so the trio's pursuer had thought. This pursuer was none other than Matt from Dom's Raiders. The only surviving member of his wiped-out party. Everything had gone south after the Team Dom's Raiders was met with SR Snake's incident. Matt had to be hospitalized for a week. And DOM did everything in his power to save him. But later on, Matt was informed that DOM Walker had been the mass murderer of his entire party as well as Isaac's party. That he was in cahoots with Ozenwood's butcher. Matt refuted that claim entirely. He had a lot of conflicting information that would at least be enough to question the authenticity of Dom's involvement in the whole thing. But nobody entertained him. When he tried to make some more noise, Matt's hunting license was revoked by the OB and he was prevented from forming a party with the association's members. All of a sudden, Matt was out of a good job. Matt was as confused as he was angry. Everybody had seemed like they were hell-bent on making Dom Walker the only guilty person in the entire case. But that was not all. They had even stopped discussing or investigating the OWB's role and identity entirely. Even a non-scheming guy like Matt could understand that this was a cover-up for something bigger he wasn't aware of. Matt had nowhere to go or no one to count on. His party was his only family during all these years. And he wouldn't accept Dom as the mastermind behind everything even if someone were to beat him to death for it. What was a guy like him supposed to do now to get to the bottom of things? Matt kept on thinking about various possibilities. And his mind finally zeroed in on one detail that everyone seemed to have missed. Apart from Matt's party itself, only one other group of people knew about what had happened to Dom's raiders at first. It was through that group the city's various organizations came to know about the incident. That small group of people was Nina and Aaron. Even Matt kept rejecting the idea of their involvement. They had no motive. But that idea would always sneak back into his head, probably because he didn't have any other lead. Questioning Nina about it was a suicide Matt didn't want to commit. But what if Matt could scare a kid into telling him everything he knows about the case? Chapter 55, Matt's Seppuku. What if Matt could scare a kid into telling him everything he knows about the case? Matt was only placing a small bet on a hunch. He didn't have high expectations from this investigation. Matt wouldn't have acted on this hunch had Aaron not left the city of Ozen where Nina's influence was strong. But it all changed when the kid decided to head to the academy. Matt came to know that the group would halt at the city of Laurel. He decided to question Aaron at that time. Matt was going to find a chance to get some alone time with Aaron, but the latter only made the job easy for him when he decided to book a separate room. It was past midnight. The city of Laurel was asleep. Matt had also booked a room in the same room to gain entry into the establishment. He found Aaron's room and used his thieving skills to unlock the door. When Matt entered Aaron's room, the latter was seen looking right at him. Matt immediately got the creeps after he realized Aaron was staring at him with a different kind of anticipation. Aaron jumped on his bed as soon as he found his room in the inn. An extended trip in the small box, drawn by powerful colts who don't care about the bumps on the road, ought to give you a sore back, even when you are an F-rank ranker. But as soon as he laid on the bed to straighten his back, Aaron was reminded of his nights in bed with Nina. Would they still do it after suffering through a long journey like this? Had she been here with him? Aaron thought of that and answered affirmatively. Aaron tried to sleep. And he succeeded in sleeping for a few hours. But when he woke up and looked at the moon outside, Nina's naked visage was all he could see over it. Aaron's thoughts about Nina invoked a reaction down there. His dick woke up from his slumber as a result. Aaron started stroking it. Not for nutting with self-help. But soothe it while he thought about her. He had already decided that he would never nut in vain in this life. What if Nina were to come into his room now? Aaron had this thought and chided himself for it. Why would Nina follow him here? Or maybe she would. Aaron was lost in his fantasy while stroking his lil guy when Reen, who was sleeping on his chest, informed him about an intruder. Aaron immediately thought of Nina. Did she really follow me here? Aaron was excited and started looking at the door. His pace of strokes also increased in anticipation. Aaron's furor was at its peak when the door was unlocked and a person walked in sneakily. Brad, what the hell are you looking at? And stop masturbating while looking at me? My preferences are straight. Matt forgot that he was supposed to sneak in. A feeling of declaring his stance had overwhelmed him. Who the fuck are you, old man? And why does everyone keep thinking that my preferences are not straight? Aaron had already forgotten about the emergency patient he had at the apothecary. He wouldn't care about a guy like him even if he could remember him. And the guy's timing had to be the worst thing about him. It was Matt who had arrived at Aaron's doorstep unannounced when the latter was about to have his talk with Nina. Aaron would have progressed much faster at the very beginning when the proverbial iron was hot had it been not for this guy. But that wasn't enough. Matt had to barge into Aaron's room to not let him think about his good times with Nina in peace. Aaron didn't even feel this much anger on Isaac when the latter had stopped him on his whims. I see that your hormones are raging. I can sympathize. But I'm not here to be the object of your skewed fascination. What I want is simple, kid. Answer my few questions and I'll let you go. And don't even think about shouting to call for help. I've already used an F-rank sound isolation artifact. Matt had accepted his cover was blown. He closed the door and walked in slowly. He took the only chair present in the room, which was placed right in front of Aaron's bed. Matt had deployed a sound isolation artifact before coming here as a precaution. Now he was glad that he did. Are you sure the artifact works fine? What if someone were to circulate their F-rank mana through their vocal cords and use a mana-induced voice? Aaron asked just as calmly. Matt had to admit the kid had a good bearing. This is an upper-grade artifact of F-rank. No amount of your efforts can allow you to surpass the artifact's limitations. Now answer my question. You probably don't remember me. But my name is Matt from Dom's Raiders. I was the one DOM had brought to your apothecary as a case for severe SR snake poisoning. Did you talk to someone after we left your place? And did you give information about? Aaron had stopped listening to Matt. He was talking to Reen in his head. He first confirmed that the artifact Matt had activated the way he claimed to be using Reen's mana sense. He checked for any potential eyewitnesses in the vicinity. And lastly, Aaron checked for any audiovisual artifact on Matt's person that could transfer what was happening here to any remote place. Aaron finally looked at Matt, who was still talking about something. But Aaron had stopped caring. The guy could live as the last living survivor of the tragedy that had befallen his party. He could have a family and live to tell the tale to his grandchildren. If Aaron was in Matt's shoes, he would have relocated to a different kingdom instead of risking his life getting to the bottom of this cover-up that looked all kinds of muddy even to a blind person. But Matt didn't want the easy life. Aaron didn't waste any more time. He didn't even get off his bed to get rid of this idiot. Reen. Go have your late-night snack. Reen ironically morphed into naked DOM. Since Matt was talking about DOM, Reen thought her food's last wish before it would get consumed was to see DOM. Matt had aimed his monologue at Aaron. He had so many questions that were growing like a spider's web inside his head. His heart had been filled with injustice. In his need to vent out these feelings, he had forgotten to check on his listener. And suddenly naked DOM appeared in front of him. The word surprise was an understatement. The word puzzled only touched the surface. And the word shocked barely covered it. What Matt felt was a concoction of these emotions, and then some more. What? How? Why? Matt couldn't form coherent sentences. But before he could, he heard Aaron's answer and everything went dark in front of his eyes. Just die in mystery. Aaron said this and dropped hard on his bed. His little guy had already fallen asleep. It was about time he did too. He drew the sheets on him and shut his eyes. The Ozenwood's butcher didn't even spare a glance at Matt, who was struggling inside a slimy ball of mess. The struggle stopped soon after. Reen sneaked inside the sheets to take her usual spot after turning into her usual form. Like this, Matt had joined his party in its afterlife adventures after committing a seppuku. One could imagine his soul getting welcomed by his friends, who would then take their time cursing Aaron to his past and future 7 generations. Chapter 56, Small World. Aaron woke up the next day feeling refreshed. He was holding a palm-sized pebble with inscriptions on it. It was the F-rank sound isolation artifact kind-hearted Matt had gifted him last night. Aaron stored the artifact in his ID. He had plenty of uses for it. Aaron got ready to explore the city a little before leaving it in the afternoon. Aaron had a lot of herbs in his storage that he had collected from the Ozenwoods. Some of them had no immediate uses for him. He might as well sell them to make a profit. And what other city would be better to sell these herbs than the city of L'Oreal? Aaron opened his room's door to head out. But he found 4 people were waiting by his door. Sir Lin, what are you doing here? Aaron recognized Linkar among them. He realized these people must be here looking for Matt. Oh? Isn't that Madame Healer's nephew? Why are you staying here? We came here following the traces of a suspicious person named Matt. He had come to your apothecary a few days back, so you should know him. Did you see him here anywhere? Linkar gave Aaron a piece of brief information about his reason for being here. He had told the OB to assign someone to keep an eye on Matt. The informer had relayed to them that Matt was still fixated on clearing Dom's name. He confirmed that Matt had left the city of Ozen for the city of Laurel. Linkar was heading to the academy anyway. The city of L'Oreal was a natural gathering spot for a carriage fleet heading to the Lionheart. It was in Lin's interest that he travels in masses, lest he gets ambushed by Eisen Ozen's forces. So he decided to check up on this liability named Matt on the way. Lin was going to try one more time talking sense into Matt. He had already told the guy to drop the whole subject of DOM as one bad deal in his life. But the guy wouldn't listen. Lin can't always keep tabs on Matt in case he does something to resurrect the case of Ozenwood's butcher, which they had buried after so many efforts. He had decided to silence Matt for good if he didn't listen this time. Sir Lin, I haven't seen Matt. I'm going to attend LA as a first-year student. So I came with the Sullivans. They are staying in the room next to me. We will join the carriage fleet in the afternoon that leaves for the city of Lionheart. But why is Matt a suspect? Wasn't he a victim of the Woods disturbance? Lin was surprised Aaron was going to attend LA. But it made sense after he thought about it. The boy must have been offered a reserved seat. Oh. That's a nice coincidence. Then you should start calling me Professor Lin, boy. I'm also heading for LA. Let me introduce 3 people to you who are assigned under me. They will be joining the academy as the assistant professors. Lin then introduced LA's new assistant professors under him. They were Peter, Ella, and Julie. Peter and Ella were the same party members from Lin's party that had found Isaac's body. And Julie was the one who had recorded fake Dom's footage that had him testifying to his alleged crimes. Julie Eckhart's name had gotten pretty famous for this event despite her attempts to remain hidden. Peter and Ella were also at risk because of their involvement in the OWB case that was connected to the Kingdom's big league. Peter, Ella, and Julie would have never involved themselves in this mess had they known the OWB was connected this deeply. Even when they had buried the case after knowing about the killer's background, their involvement had become public knowledge by now. They were in the same boat as Lynn. They needed a sturdy shelter that could save them from any possible accidents happening to them until the heat dies down. Lynn could understand their situation and empathize. Therefore, he gave them the same option he was going to make use of. A D-rank professor of LA Academy can hire 3 E-rank entities to serve as the assistant professors under them. That's why D-rank Professor Jamie had Ronald, Linda, and Verna serving as his assistant professors. Lynn had already left the LA Academy thinking he wouldn't go back to being a professor there anytime soon. His previous assistant professors have either been accommodated in the Academy's administration or hired by another professor to serve under them. Therefore, Lynn offered the trio to serve him as his assistant professor in the Academy. All 3 of them accepted the life-saving offer quickly before it could get snatched away. Lynn didn't tell Aaron the inner details. But he informed the latter of his professorship at the Academy. Lynn also told Aaron that his hunter status in the OB was more like an honorary responsibility due to his relationship with the OB. He was supposed to take a break from his academic duties. But the circumstances made him resume them for the time being. Julie Eckhart? Aren't you the one who took Dom's footage that served as conclusive evidence against him? Aaron quickly figured out Julie's identity after they were introduced to him by Linear. Aaron knew about Julie beforehand. After all, he was the one who had allowed the lady to record fake Dom's speech. Aaron would have never guessed he could meet her again after leaving the city of Ozan. Small world. Aaron thought. So Julie was going to be an AP, assistant professor, at the Academy along with 2 others. He would see them for the next 5 years. At least Julie looked hot among them. Aaron thought he should try his luck with her. He knew Julie could be swayed with money and resources, thanks to her interaction with fake Dom. Peter and Ella's names were known by the hunters as the prime investigators behind the OWB case. But they were still lesser known than Julie among the common populace. Therefore Aaron neither covertly nor overtly knew about them. Julie smiled mirthlessly as Aaron identified her. She couldn't wait to reach the Academy now. She felt like the so-called accidents might come from anywhere and anytime if she keeps on getting identified like this. Even a mere brat had recognized her. It was about time she disappeared from the public and concentrated on being an AP at the Academy. Kid, I'm a ranger. I tracked Matt's presence to your room and then it vanished. Maybe he had entered your room while you were sleeping. Why don't you step aside and let us conduct our investigation? We can consider that we owe you one. Peter stepped forward and declared his intentions. Aaron nodded and stepped away, letting them enter the room. Aaron had already confirmed that whoever gets killed and eaten by Reen becomes difficult to track post their death. Their presence almost completely fades away from existence. It seemed like Reen would also ingest and digest a part of her victim's auras. And that would somehow negatively impact the tracking and other such spells. It becomes nigh impossible for rangers and historians to make sense of the residue aura and traces if they get left behind at all, that is. Aaron could only associate that with Reen's special existence for now. Reen was a perfect killing and body disposal machine for him. He had nothing to fear from an E-rank ranger. Just like Aaron had thought before. The ranger couldn't find anything conclusive. He confirmed that there was an artifact used here or in the vicinity. But that was it. Peter gossiped with his party and Lynn had to conclude their investigation at the site. Thanks, Aaron. We'll take our leave now. See you in the afternoon. We'll be traveling together. Aaron smiled and nodded his head. His smiling face immediately turned serious right after shutting the door behind them. Aaron had to watch out for Jaime's group in the Academy. Another group had been added to that list. Lynn's group was more dangerous for him than Jaime's in many ways. Lynn knew him personally. His group had been deeply involved in the OWB case. It knew inside information about the case that might not have been released to the public. Of course, Aaron knew that Lynn and his assistants were far from knowing his involvement in the case. But one slip from his end was all it needed for them to start connecting the dots. Aaron needed an insider in this group to keep tabs on them. He had another reason to hook up with Julie now. Of course, Aaron knew that Julie wouldn't want anything to do with a kid like him even if she acted like a gold digger. He needed a different approach to come close to her. Money alone wouldn't cut it. Aaron waited for a while before heading out. He was going to meet up with Jake and explore the city. Jack must have already left by now to handle his business. Chapter 57, Ivor, Jason, and Veronica. Chapter 57, Ivor, Jason, and Veronica. Jackie, my man. Your father left. Aaron greeted Jake casually. The latter nodded to his question. Yep. Father left as soon as he woke up. It's just us. So where are we heading now? We should probably get some snacks for the road first. Jake prioritized the food. He and Reen would get along quite well, Aaron thought. Jake was also an F-ran entity like Aaron. He had started his ranking journey much earlier than the latter. He liked eating and making friends. Jake's body subconsciously stored some amount of fat as a result despite him being a ranker. No amount of bodily cleansing could make that go away if it treated the fat, not as an impurity. We'll do that. But not before we find some shop to sell some herbs my aunt has given me. I also want to get a bunch of ingredients for potion making. Alright. I've been to the city many times. I know a herbal shop that is linked to our business. We can go there for your exchanges. Aaron and Jake went to the shop. Aaron sold all the unwanted but expensive ingredients he had collected from the forest and found them inside his victim's storages. Aaron demanded the payment in extals. He received more than 50 extals in the transaction. He now had around 150 extals on him. He had officially left Isaac behind in his current account money. Jake was shocked after witnessing the magnitude of the exchange. He would have never thought Aaron had so many stocks of rare ingredients. But then he thought of Nina, and it all made sense. Of course, an apothecary would certainly have this much amount. Jake thought Nina had given him something like her savings to liquidate and support Aaron in his academic life. Aaron then gave a list of ingredients he wanted from the shop. They were all F-rank materials. But he paid for them in eddies. His kingdom currency dropped by a huge margin as a result. But his extals were left untouched. Aaron and Jake were on their way to a general store to stock up on snacks when the latter saw a group of people heading their way. He recognized them instantly. Jake was active in socializing. Unlike Aaron, who acted as a shut-in while he was in the city of Ozan in both of the timelines. So he didn't recognize any of them. Yo, Jake. Knew we could find you here outside the snacks shop. You should cut down on the carbs, man. Even being a ranker is not helping you out. There were 3 people in that group. 2 boys and 1 girl. The one who spoke and body-shamed Jake was a young girl in her early teens years. Ah. If it isn't Miss Veronica Garcia. Hello. Good day to you as well, friends. Ivor Ozan and Jason Storm. Jake didn't mind the light taunt. He knew Veronica was foul-mouthed. It was better to ignore her than engage with her. Who is that guy with you? Is he also going to attend LA? Veronica zeroed in on Aaron rudely, looking at him from top to bottom and asked. Her gaze spoke that there was something that she didn't like about him. Aaron of course didn't mind being stared at by a bratty girl. Why would he care about a flat-chested lass when all he was interested in was some jiggle physics-inducing bods? Oh. Let me introduce you guys to the 5th reserved seat student from our city. His name is Aaron Idril. He is nephew to Ozan's top healer, Madam Nina. Aaron, these 3 are the remaining reserved seat students from our city. Meet Ivor Ozan, Jason Storm, and Veronica Garcia. Jake introduced Aaron to the 3 people in front of him. He didn't care about the first and last personnel. But one in the middle was someone that piqued his interest. Jason Storm. Aaron didn't know him personally, but he had heard about his name in the past timeline. Aaron had a tinge of shine in his eyes after he connected the Jason he heard of from his past to this Jason. Your personal and family background as well as your previous connections kinda become less important when you enter the academy. So although he had heard that Jason was from the same city as him, he didn't approach or try to make acquaintance with him. These guys must be leaving the city for LA with us, Aaron thought while he introduced himself cordially to the 3. Aaron acted just like Jake, easygoing and friendly. Ivor, weren't you going to join another academy? Why change to LA all of a sudden? Jake asked as he kept on buying snacks from the snack shop. They all had entered the shop. They were buying something or the other. Aaron was quiet. He knew Jake would pack things for both of them. Ha! Me joining a different academy was my grandfather Eisen's decision. And to be honest, this decision of joining LA is also not mine. I was going to join the Royal Wren Academy. But that all changed when my brother Isaac died. Now Grandpa Eisen wants me to graduate from LA instead. Ivor replied while getting himself a packet of tangy chips. He was as tall as Aaron, but his expensive clothes made him more dignified and charming than him. He had shoulder-length white hair and gray eyes, like his dead brother. Oh. Sorry for asking. Hope you can make your family proud like your brother. Jake replied with formality. But he wasn't expecting a violent reaction from Ivor. Watch your mouth, fat ass. You don't know a thing about my family or my brother. And don't believe in everything that is general knowledge about my family. Isaac was an asshole king among the assholest of assholes. I'll drink to that. Thought Aaron when he heard an apt description about his former kill straight from his younger brother. Isaac would have been kicked out of the academy as soon as he entered it if it wasn't for my grandpa's support. He squandered money and resources. He was still an F rank even after all the efforts my family put into him. I blame Grandpa for not being strict with Isaac when he needed to. But to be honest, him being the firstborn son of our generation had blinded my whole family, not just my grandfather. So stop comparing me to an ideal image of Isaac which he himself couldn't possibly hope to match up to even in his 7 lifetimes. Ivor was strict and loud with his words. It was like he had enough of being compared to his waist of a big brother. Even the snack shop owner stopped doing what he was doing and looked at the group of young kids. Jason was the one who recovered quickly from that tense atmosphere. He placed his hands on Ivor's shoulders to calm him down and spoke to Aaron and Jake on a different matter to change the subject. Sorry for that, Aaron and Jake. Ivor didn't mean that. Are you going to leave with today's carriage fleet as well? It'd be better if you do so today and not delay it any further. I heard from my sources that a guy named Matt who might be involved with the OWB has gotten into the city. He might target someone from our group, especially Ivor for his relationship with Isaac or Aaron for his relationship with Madam Healer. Jason looked connected with the information network. Aaron thought only he knew about Matt's appearance here in the city among them. But apparently, he was wrong. Jason lived up to his achievements from the previous timeline. He was a tall boy for his age. He had black hair and black eyes. The most prominent feature about him was the above-than-normal thyroid protrusion of his neck. Jake wasn't aware Eisen had created a larger-than-life image of his dead grandson. What he said to Ivor about Isaac was only a perfunctory greeting. How was Sullivan Jr. supposed to know these details? But his father's business was connected to the Ozen City administration. He couldn't afford to offend Ivor in any way. Therefore, he quickly tried to lessen the damage with his words. Oh. All right. Although I didn't mean to offend, I apologize to friend Ivor for my words. Of course, we will be careful and I'm sure you will do the same as well. Hee. Ivor, stop scaring a spineless coward. It's no fun doing that. How about a friendly duel if you really want to vent out your anger? You. Aaron or something. Why don't you spar with Ivor? I'm sure you'll learn a lot even before entering the academy. We'll become your teachers and professors free of cost. What do you say? Veronica Garcia marched verbally forward with her haughty attitude without anyone giving her a cue to do so. She was exceptionally porcelain-skinned and had golden hair and green eyes. Her body was slim and undeveloped. But one could tell she was going to grow into a bitchy yet beautiful lady. Veronica gave a naked challenge to Aaron even without the latter saying anything in retaliation to Ivor's rude behavior. Chapter 58, Ivor's Aspirations. Aaron was in a dilemma. Should he kill this little bitch first before chopping down her tongue from its base? Or should he perform the chop first before killing her? But then Aaron remembered Lynn and his panel of professors in the city. They might take action if one of the first-year students of LA disappears while traveling. Therefore, he had to drop that idea. Reen condemned Aaron for being a wuss. She was going to have another snack for the road. Her kind. Not the kind Aaron and Jake were buying. A girl gotta eat after all. But suddenly her little human nugget was taken away from her. Reen tried to assure her master that she'll not leave any clue behind. If push comes to shove, she would even digest her victim's clothes to eradicate any form of a trace. Aaron shut her up with an unflinching no in his head. Even if she could eliminate the traces, this wasn't the right time for Reen to leave her inorganic form amid so many ranked entities gathered in the city. Reen had assumed the shape of a pendant around Aaron's neck. Aaron wanted her to remain that way for as long as she could. Miss Veronica, surely you jest. I'm a simple wannabe poti-waner. I don't even know how to kill a mouse. All I've ever done till now is make elementary potions. So I have no choice but to refuse your friendly offer. One could imagine DOM Raiders members coughing blood after hearing Aaron's claim about him being unable to kill a mouse. That indirectly meant they were even less worthy than a mouse as prey. Aaron said his bullshittery and bowed ever so slightly. They could all see that the bow was only done as a formality. Umph. A coward's friend is another of his kind. Why was I expecting anything different? Someday I'll have to straighten you guys up so that you can at least stand up for yourself. Should I eat her now? Reen asked in a suppressed excitement. Maybe a mere food ridiculing her master will change his mind and he'll allow her to take a bite. The Demona slime was very optimistic. No. Said Aaron to his pet before replying. Jason, is it? Thank you for informing us about Matt. We will go to our inn soon afterwards and stay there until the carriage fleet gets ready. Now, if you'd excuse us. See you soon. Aaron quickly changed the topic and treated Veronica's words as passing wind, invisible and inconsequential. That triggered the bratty girl even more. But before she could speak, Ivor looked at Aaron before saying. Hold on a minute, Aaron. Speaking of Matt. How well do you know him? I read in one of the reports my grandpa kept on his study table that your apothecary had treated the guy before he was hospitalized. Do you think he is also involved with the OWB? If yes, what else can you tell me about him? Ivor asked with a solemn face. His eyes were deadly serious. His aura had become calm and collected. It was like something wanted to resurface from within him at that time. I don't know anything else about Matt that isn't already there in the report. I just know that he was very loyal to DOM and will do anything to clear his name. But why are you so keen on knowing about the guy? Don't tell me you want to kill him. Forget about the feasibility of doing something like that at our age or the thing being right or wrong. Didn't you hate your brother? That Matt guy, if he is involved with the OWB, must have done you a favor by making sure that Isaac doesn't create trouble for you ever in the future. You are now the heir apparent to the baronet. Why are you so angry with him? Aaron normally would have let things go. He wouldn't have bothered asking anyone anything because he already had so many of his past life experiences, however restricted they were. But there was something else in Ivor that wasn't there in Isaac. Aaron asked Ivor that question because he felt the guy was too unstable when it came to Isaac. And it wasn't due to brotherly love. It was something more driven and ambitious. Aaron could feel that Ivor thought highly of himself. But he also felt that the kid had the skills to back that feeling. Aaron lived less than a mediocre life in his previous lifetime. So Ivor's persona, the special light in his eyes, intrigued Aaron. It invoked certain greed in him. Aaron felt like he should rob Ivor of that light in his eyes. He felt like he should wring the boy dry of his ambitions so that he can use them to forge his own set of ambitions. That's why Aaron asked Ivor this question. And he asked him provocatively. So that the latter would give an honest account of his inner feelings. And it worked. Haha. Favor. What kind of folk in favor are you talking about? Royal Wren is better than LA in every possible way. You know why there's the word royal placed in its name, right? It's because Royal Wren mostly houses the folk and royal kids of the kingdom along with the kids of bureaucrats and other crucial positions. Only when a royal scion from any of their royal family branches fails to secure admission in Royal Wren does he reluctantly get into any other of the top 4 academies of the kingdom. The same is the case with bureaucrats' kids. LA in the south, specialising in berserkers, close combat experts and poti-oneers. Lufthansa in the west. It specializes in historians, rangers, thieves, and other combat-centric professionals. Artemis in the north is famous for giving stellar long-ranger fighters to the kingdom. And Sansara Sage in the east, which is renowned for producing scholars in runes, inscriptions, arrays, artifacts, and more. But do you know why Royal Wren stands at the top among these academies? It's because it specializes in everything. It has everything. It stands above the top 4 institutes. It's like all the knowledge the Edinburgh Kingdom has to offer is condensed into a single place we know as Royal Wren. It receives the biggest grant among all the top academies from the kingdom. And it boasts of the most qualified and famous professors. Sure, the 4 academies are at their top in their respective zones. And they produce countless experts. But Royal Wren offers ordinary students something that other academies can't, even if all of them were to receive the same amount of resources as the former. You know what that is, right? It's the chance to make connections with the royal scions. They are the ones who are going to get appointed to the most important places available in the kingdom, whether they fall into the civilian, bureaucratic, or military categories. After all, the other mainstream positions in the kingdom are going to get taken by the students of Royal Wren. Agreed, other than royal scions and the children of bureaucrats, the ordinary students in the Royal Wren aren't treated well. Even someone from the house of a baron won't be able to exert much of their influence. Plus, Royal Wren places certain restrictions on students who aren't part of the royal branch. Ordinary students who graduate from the Royal Wren have to serve the royal house exclusively for a certain period. A binding mono-contract will have to be signed by these students that would attest to the same. Still, I had a chance to attend Royal Wren. My future would have been much brighter if I could attend the most resource-rich academy of Edinburgh. But now I ended up in LA. What will I even do after I graduate from LA? Become an adventurer? A hunter? Even if I somehow manage to secure a place in the royal court's bureaucracy, civil offices, or military, the position won't be high. My promotion will always stagnate. Students from Royal Wren will be prioritized over me for higher, better paying, more important positions. What good are your skills if someone with connections gets appointed over you because of their royal contact? That's why students from the top 4 academies become famous adventurers and hunters. It's because they cannot help but become only that. The students from the top 4 academies choose not to struggle for these positions because they know their struggle to grow will be futile in the end. That's why they turn to become normal soldiers, city guards, adventurers, and hunters rather than trying their luck for those positions. At least after staying active on the field, they can hope to progress further in their ranking journey while earning a decent amount. That's what they think when they opt for those professions. But that's just the brute way of handling things if you ask me. Royal Ren contains much easier, safer ways with which you can progress rapidly in your rankings. The information about those ways is heavily restricted. The binding contract will make sure that those ways stay limited to the students and teacher bodies of the Royal Ren. In short, becoming a student of Royal Ren is your ticket to success in life. Whether it is social standing, monetary growth, or ranking journey, you will progress much ahead, much faster, and much better in all walks of life if you become a Royal Ren alumni. Why would someone who has a chance to attend Royal Ren will find joy in attending LA? But the thing I dreaded the most happened to me. My loser brother had to die just before my entrance to the Royal Ren. It would have been perfect if Isaac were to become the heir to Ozen Baronet. But now I have to carry that responsibility. Only because he had to kiss the angel of death at the worst possible time. Now Grandpa won't allow me to sign the binding contract anymore. So I'm stuck in LA. Without a contract. And without a prosperous future. So you tell me. How did you manage to concur that Ozenwood's butcher or any of his accomplices must have done me a huge favor by getting rid of the only ticket I had to escape mediocrity? The folk in OWB, the accomplices of OWB are my mortal enemies. Not because they killed my brother. But because they killed my dreams. Ivor vented out all the load in his heart that was weighing him down. He gave voice to his dreams, his aspirations, and his despair. In front of 4 LA students, 1 emotional for no reason snack shop's keeper, and a few customers. Chapter 59, Targeted Banditry and Assassinations. The heir apparent to the Ozen Baronet had realized he had lost his senses to his emotions. He had told these guys many crucial things that weren't privy to common folks. Like the binding contract of Royal Ren. And the kingdom-controlled ways to progress smoothly in the ranking journey. But it was too late. Ivor had already said those things. And he couldn't take them back. Furthermore, he had expressed his true feelings regarding his brother Isaac to the people outside his family. Ivor started looking around himself. He was thinking about exiting this zone of weird silence that has been created by him. Everyone was looking at him with blank stares and sealed lips. That's when the snacks shop owner, with his moist eyes, came to him and gave him another pack of chips. On the house, he said. Ivor could only muster a stuttering thanks as a response. Probably the owner of the shop shared the same kind of brotherly bond with his sibling. But that interaction finally broke the zone of weird silence and everyone around Ivor started returning to their tasks. Forgive me, Ivor, for asking something like that. I just didn't know it was this personal. And thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. We too feel closely tend to you now. But it's about time we take our leave. We have some work we need to take care of, you see. So catch you later, maybe. Goodbye and stay alert. Aaron grabbed Jake by his hand and dragged him from that place. Ivor, Jason, and Veronica were still stuck in their place. Veronica didn't seem unfazed like she knew about these details and dilemmas that Ivor had mentioned already. She was just waiting for her group to move on. But Jason on the other hand was seen thinking deeply. He baited you into saying those things. Jason finally concluded and said what he came to realize lightly. You are giving too much credit to that wuss. He probably wasn't aware of what he was asking of Ivor. It was Ivor who had lost control. You are trying to overread these things like always, Jason. No, I don't have any valid proof regarding this. But the way Aaron changed his tone, his body language, and the way he looked at Ivor while asking that question subconsciously affected him to say what he was truly feeling at that time. The guys know us. I didn't feel any fear emanating from him. To be honest, I didn't feel anything from him that was directed at us. Like we weren't worth his time. But that all changed when Ivor asked him about Matt. If you ask me, he probably knows something about the guy. Or maybe he was just fishing for information from us. And he used Ivor's curiosity on him. In any case, Aaron isn't like Jake even when they seem to act the same way. He has drawn a sheep's clothing over him, all right. I just don't know what he is underneath it. Jason said those words to nobody in particular. But Ivor understood what he was trying to say. He was played like a fiddle by Aaron in that short interaction. The Ozen Jr. couldn't help narrowing his eyes on Aaron's departing figure. Why are we rushing? Can't we walk normally? We still have time to do things, you know. Jake said those while being dragged hurriedly to somewhere by Aaron. He just didn't understand why they were in a rush all of a sudden. Jackie, you and Ivor would be clueless. And that brat Veronica just doesn't care enough. But Jason isn't like any of you. He must have figured out by now that I baited Ivor into saying those things. Had we stayed there any longer, more complications would have risen. Just trust me when I say this. But we don't want to be seen as his friends. Especially during the trip to the academy. It's better for us if we stay away from those guys for a few days even during our travels together. I've completed my transactions. You've got your snacks. There's nothing important in the city of Laurel anymore. I don't think we need to check out of the inn since we had a prepaid stay. Let's go to your father and wait for the carriage fleet to start its journey. Jake finally understood what was happening. But he thought Aaron was overreacting even if that were to be the case. You just met Jason today. Why are you talking like you already know about him? Haha. I also have my sources, you know. I'll tell you about these things later on. Right now let's go meet up with your father. More than a week later, Aaron's carriage arrived in the city of Lionheart. The academy was going to conduct an induction ceremony for the first-year students at the grand-sized city square in 3 days. The city of Lionheart was established after the academy was founded. The place that was used for students' temporary accommodations before their induction ceremony later became known as the city of Lionheart. The city of Lionheart's economy was based on these students and teacher bodies. It would welcome loads of first-year students at this of the year annually. Therefore, it had all the things a student would require, no matter which academic year they were in. Aaron already had plenty of artifacts collected from Isaac's party. Plus, Nina had given him a complete set of upper-grade F-rank equipment that was perfectly suitable for him. He didn't need anything else. But Jake needed them. He had prevented his father from buying random things so he could pick them on his own. The guy was very particular about his snacks and belongings. Aaron roamed the city market with Jake. The latter bought a couple of items and stuff suitable for him. He again stocked up on snacks. And he also bought some adult magazines covertly from a shady shop. What could a slightly chubby guy like Jake do? He had his needs. And he wasn't aiming to get late in the academy anytime soon like a certain fellow who was roaming with him at the time. Aaron and Jake made sure they didn't meet up with Ivor's group during their exploration and purchases. They would keep on changing places. And would leave their current positions immediately if they saw any group of students approaching them. Aaron and Jackie had been avoiding meeting with Ivor's group during all their travels. They would always tell the carriage driver to slow or speed up their carriage at seemingly random moments to pull this off. Aaron told Jake that avoiding Jason meant avoiding the spies and any other entities hidden in the shadows, protecting him. And hunting him. Sullivan Jr. finally shared Aaron's worries after knowing that only Ivor's carriage carrying Jason had been getting targeted by the group of bandits en route. Of course, the bandits would target other carriages as well. But they would all have Ivor's carriage as their common target. Furthermore, Jake observed that both the bandits and the protectors of the carriage fleet were more powerful than usual. The nightly assassinations started taking place on Ivor's carriage when the indirect banditry didn't work. But Ivor's carriage and people inside would always stay safe. It was the other carriages running nearby that would suffer the consequences. Till now, the carriage fleet had 4 student casualties as a result of these attacks and assassinations. There were a lot more injured. But everybody treated it like it was business as usual. Attacks on carriage fleets and business caravans by the bandits were common occurrences. So nobody questioned anyone or found someone to blame on. But Jake had understood there was more than meets the eye when it came to Jason after witnessing the events. Most ranked entities, including Lynn's group, later on, assumed the targeted attacks were aimed at Ivor because of Ozenwood's butcher. They thought that the OWB had some score to settle with the Ozen household for interfering in his work or getting his info out in the public. Therefore, Lynn's group didn't actively participate in protecting Ivor's carriage even when they were supposed to protect their students. What a joke. Take on the royally connected OWB for an Ozen kid. Eisen Ozen was probably planning to kill Lynn for his so-called transgressions. Lynn, therefore, had 2 distinct reasons not to interfere in the OWB's work. He had already offended the guy enough. He didn't want to risk it anymore. It was easier to handle Eisen even after he lets Ivor die in the incident. Once he reaches the academy grounds, that is. But all of them didn't know was the fact that the OWB himself was traveling with them and was running away from these attacks even before they took place. Aaron was adamant about constantly changing the carriage's position in the fleet while maintaining a safe distance from a particular carriage. The Sullivans thought the elementary Pody Oner was acting weirdly at first, but they changed their mind as they traveled further. Jake started trusting Aaron even more than before. He had already figured out that he knew something about Jason that he hadn't told him yet. But Jake didn't force him. It would be better if Aaron told things of his own initiative. Aaron and Jake finally breathed a sigh of relief when they reached the city of Lionheart. The Academy's protectors were enough to safeguard the citizens of their turf from any form of danger. The induction ceremony for LA's first-year students was going to take place today. The grand city square was packed with students and their guardians. Aaron and Jake could be seen standing with Jack Sullivan at a certain corner. The audience was looking at the elevated stage in the middle of the city square. A serious-looking man was seen standing firmly on that stage with his hands behind his back. There was a panel of people accompanying him on either side, standing a step behind him. The man opened his mouth to speak when the city tower's clock located right in the middle of the square produced a half-deafening bell sound, indicating that it was 10 a.m. Chapter 60, Induction Ceremony. The man opened his mouth to speak when the city tower's clock produced a half-deafening bell sound, indicating that it was 10 a.m. Hello, dear first-year students of the Lionheart's Adventurers Academy. My name is Rufus Rodriguez. I am one of the vice principals of LA and head of everything that relates to first-year students. First of all, let me extend a sincere welcome to each one of you. You've made it till here. Either due to your hard work or connections. It doesn't matter anymore. There's nobody superior or inferior amongst you. You are all equal to each other. This might sound perfunctory to you now. But you'll come to realize how true these words are when you start living on the academy grounds. I'll come clean by saying this right off the bat. I'm rooting for those who've gotten inside the academy with their merits over who got inside with their reserved seats. There are two reasons why I feel like this. First, I too had to get inside the academy through my skills and perseverance. So I can empathize with them. And second, those who had to pass the test to enter the academy have a certain mindset that gives them an edge over most reserved seat students. But let me clear this before you draw any conclusions. The students who progress further and quicker in the academy at the end are still mostly those who entered the institution through reserved seats. Therefore, I can't find it in me to dislike this way of selecting the students. You might think my statements are contradictory. So let me clear them for you. The edge ordinary students have over the reserved quota student stays intact while they all are in the first year. Your current academic year. But this edge soon becomes blunt as the students progress through the academic year. Why is that? It's because although the first year students mostly have the same starting point, the amount of resources they can avail themselves of over time to progress further makes the difference. If the efforts put in by all of the students are on the same level, that is, the first year sees the reserved seat members taking less effort than their other peers. And that difference in efforts becomes the force with which the ordinary students dominate the first year. But this domination results in the reserved seat members feeling jealousy, dissatisfaction, rage, and a cocktail of similar emotions. The first year ordinary students become the reason for the reserved quota students to have that edge they lacked at the start of the first year. When the field of effort becomes even for everybody is when the real battle begins. At that time, the abundance or shortage of resources plays an important role. It is what it is. The reserved category students are mostly financially stable, whereas those who had to enter the academy through the test are not. Plus, the reserved category students would probably have higher ranked entities as their guardians. These guardians will guide the students in their ranking journey and other similar aspects. Whereas, ordinary students will have low-ranked or even rankless guardians as their pillar of support. This can become a handicap for students who allow it. Therefore, the first year becomes special for everyone, irrespective of your background. Have a test of defeat, shame, and guilt if you are from the reserved category. Feel the exhilaration that comes with dominating the class that has lorded over you if you are an ordinary student. The academy will only stand as a bystander. Never forget those feelings that you are going to have in your first year. They are the most primal feelings one could experience in their life. Draw power from these feelings to advance further at all costs, at any cost. The opposing forces will sharpen each other. And that's how the academy manages to give this kingdom the experts that they need in all fields. I'll be honest with you. We will pit you against each other. Not just reserved seats vs the ordinary. It will be first years vs seniors. It will be you vs the magic beasts. And it will be you vs the instructors. In short, it will be you vs everyone. We will make you struggle with every resource that is available in the academy. Even the special lectures and practice sessions organized by professors will have to be paid for with your hard work. Nothing worth your time ever comes free in this world. You'll have to earn the resources through everything you can draw from within you. Therefore, the reserved seat students should focus on putting in as much effort as the ordinary students if they want to stay on top from the first year itself. And ordinary students should start putting in twice the effort as they are used to. Just remember, the day you take rest will be the day you might get left behind by your peers. But also ensure that you don't burn out yourself. Otherwise, it'll be even more detrimental for you. Now let me tell you how LA was founded. Most of you already know this, but we must revisit the roots we came from and remember the history that birthed us. The Lionheart Academy is as old as the Edinburgh Kingdom itself. It was established around 700 years ago. Almost 50 years after the Edinburgh Kingdom was founded. The first king and founder of the Edinburgh Kingdom, Emil Edinburgh von Riener, had 4 loyal followers. They had achieved tons of feats for King Emil and therefore were as respected as the king himself. King Emil had given absolute authority to these 4 retainers. The Kingdom of Edinburgh only ever had 4 Grand Dukes. King Emil had granted these Grand Dukedoms located at 4 corners of the kingdom to his loyal retainers with their titles. The Berserker Ivar Ironside was given the title of Lionheart. He was given the Grand Dukedom located in the southernmost region. The assassin Yuffie Loxley was saluted with the title of Lufthansa. He found his Grand Dukedom in the westernmost region of the kingdom. The title of Artemis was given to the exceptional archer of her time near a nightshade. The northernmost region of the kingdom was assigned as her turf. And finally, Lin Lihan was given the easternmost region to rule. He was the one hailed as Sansara sage. After the kingdom was stabilized post its foundation, King Emil ordered his retainers to establish institutes in their respective turfs to cultivate the upcoming generations of the kingdom and cultivate within them an unwavering love for the soil. This was how the top 4 academies were established. Ivar Ironhide was the founding dean of our Lionheart Academy. He was a ferocious berserker of his age. Later on, he became an equally exceptional close combat expert. Therefore, the academy too focused its curriculum on being a berserker and close combat expert. The path of a berserker is heavily dependent on the berserk potions. Therefore, our academy also specializes in potion making. But that doesn't mean we don't teach and promote other paths. We admit that we don't have many resources available in those fields compared to the paths of berserk, close combat expert, and poti oner. But rest assured, the academy has plenty to offer throughout the academic years in all paths a ranker can tread on. LA won't ever become a bottleneck in any path that you choose during the 5 years. It will be up to you to progress on the paths you've decided to tread. After entering the academy, the students will be tested for their aptitudes and will be offered a consultation with qualified experts. The students can select the path they wish to tread on after listening to the said advice. Let's get to your enrollment now that the formalities are over. We will divide the students into 2 groups after confirming their identities. The first group will contain the students who have started their ranking journey while the second group will contain the ones who haven't. Those who have entered the F rank, they'll just need to submit their ID stones. Their mana signature will be recorded. A mana array will be drawn upon their ID stones that will serve as the access key to enter the academy grounds. Those who have entered the F rank but haven't gotten their ID stones will be provided one. We will also help the students bind their respective ID stones to them using blood ritual and spatial magic. That way, their ID stones will get absorbed into the palm of their hands and won't be stolen or get used for illegal purposes. The ID stone will let you see a spectral screen stating your base stats once it is bloodbound to you. It will help you keep track of your progress and do a few things within the academy that you will come to know later on. The ones who haven't started their ranking journey will be given an ID token drawn with the same array. The ID tokens will have some restrictions. You'll come to know them when you enter the academy. There are around 500 first-year students. They will be divided into 5 divisions after their ID inscriptions have been drawn. You'll be taken to the academy grounds right after we complete these procedures. Say goodbyes to your guardians now. You'll only be able to see them during long annual holidays. The students started forming various queues after Rufus' speech was over. Lin's panel was also seen regulating the crowd. Aaron submitted his ID stone to a counter. The academy staff at the counter placed that stone at the eye of the array drawn over a 1 square foot white page, which was laid open on a work desk. The array lit up and started contracting before it vanished from the page, turning it blank. But that too didn't last long as the white paper crumbled to dust. The same array appeared over the surface of the ID stone in its miniaturist form. Then it got even smaller before seemingly vanishing from the surface. The academy staff then laid another array over the desk and kept the ID stone right at the eye of the array. He grabbed Aaron's hand and punctured one of his fingers using a needle-like artifact to draw the drop of blood. The blood was dropped over the ID stone. The array lit up right after it before facing the same destiny as the previous array. Aaron's consciousness experienced a connection with that ID stone at the time. He placed his right palm over it and it was absorbed into it, only leaving a black ink tattoo of the stone. The enrollment procedure was complete for Aaron. Other students also went through the same experiences. They started bidding adieu to their guardians after that. Soon, a giant platform could be seen hovering over the skies of the city square. One could see a huge array that had been lit up at its base. Almost every student and even a few students marveled at that sight. Some were mesmerized. Others were shocked. Especially all the low-ranked entities and ordinary students who hadn't seen or imagined anything like this. Jake had his mouth left open at that sight. But then he saw Aaron looking at this flying wonder casually. Aaron had already heard the same speech in his previous life. That time he didn't understand in depth what Rufus was talking about. But this time he did. There was only one rule in the academy. Survival of the fittest. He was too busy crafting his plans to care about a giant artifact that he already knew to exist. Aaron had seen this flying artifact previously. That time he acted like Jake. This time he didn't see the need to. People looked at the flying artifact with fascination in their eyes as it was settling down on the ground. They had such fascination because they thought they'd never be able to use that artifact personally. They were content in seeing that thing work. But Aaron wasn't like them. He knew he'll have something much better than this oversized flying turtle in the future when he reaches a high rank. That's right. That giant flying platform was an A-rank artifact. Chapter 61, Spectral Screen. Damn. Look at the ground from this point, Aaron. It's so cool. We should just keep on flying today if you ask me. Jake was very excited about his first flying experience. As were lots of other students. Only a few students stayed at the center. Most of them were gathered at the circular edge of the platform, observing the grounds and scenes getting distant as soon as they passed over them. There was no risk of anyone falling off of the edge. The platform had generated a dome-shaped transparent energy shield that would keep the students safeguarded. It had also prevented the students from experiencing overwhelming wind pressure, resulting in a calm atmosphere inside the energy dome despite the breakneck speed. Aaron was with Jake standing near the edge of the platform. He was looking below the platform like everyone else. But one could tell he wasn't interested in what was happening to the ever-changing scenery. A lot of the students weren't aware of the blood-bound ID stone's functions. But Aaron was. This was one of the biggest investments the Academy had made for its students without them realizing it. The students will be briefed about their new and improved ID stone's functions after reaching the Academy grounds. But that didn't mean they couldn't use some of them at this point. The butcher calmed his mind and made a connection with the ID stone located in the palm using his mana sense. He called out to something in his head and saw the spectral screen in front of him that only he could see. Name Aaron Elijah Idril, verified. Organization, Lionheart's Adventurers Academy. Academic details Class 1/C. Unranked student, first year ranking war status, pending. Base stats. HP 3.5/3.5. MP 4.7/4.7. STR 2.1. AGI 1.7. INT 2.4. BTP 14. BTP visibility shown to all. Ranking technique 2-star, rankless Edinburgh standard technique, unusable. F rank spells null. HP stands for health points a ranker has. It indicates their overall health status. MP means mana points. It quantifies the mana storage within the ranker score. The physical prowess of a ranker is denoted by STR while their agility in movements and attack deployment is quantified with AGI. INT stands for intelligence. It quantifies the mental power a ranker can exert to think, cast spells, and more. BTP or base total point is calculated after summing up all the base stat values. It is often represented in a whole number after rounding off the summation. It gives an approximate understanding of the ranker's overall prowess. Since BTP adds all the base body stat values a ranker has, it is the one that is taken into account the most when two opponents in the same rank are dueling. BTP will allow for an easy understanding of characters' power levels with respect to each other using a single numeric value. Knowing about your opponent's BTP can give you a hint of their prowess. Therefore, it is the most sought-after information on the Academy grounds. Of course, BTP alone isn't an absolute indicator of a ranker's superiority. A ranker having higher BTP might not win against a ranker that has lower BTP than them. Many other factors will also play an important role in the battle. Like the number and type of spells available, their compatibility with the respective rankers, and their class. A battle can turn either way if it takes place between two opponents having almost the same BTP as well as same number and type of spells. But the derived stat can be used as a go-to tool to predict the outcome when the difference is high enough. Generally, if the ranker overwhelms their opponent with their BTP, they'll be able to register a win even if they belong to a non-combat class. Aaron was genuinely surprised looking at his BTP in this timeline. It was 4 units more than his previous timeline when he had first entered the F rank back then. But in this life, Aaron had received a boost of 4 units right from the get-go. That too when he had just joined the academy and broken through using a traditional technique. He could only concur that it was due to the gem that he had eaten and was now a part of him. The 2-star, rankless Edinburgh technique was the traditional technique Aaron had used to break through into the F rank. It was widely circulated for the rankless populace. It was stable and straightforward. And simple enough so that it could be understood and used by everyone. The technique had become unusable for Aaron since he had already stepped into F rank. He needed a F rank technique now to resume his ranking journey. The BTP visibility was a way for students to know about each other's BTP. It was currently set at shown to all by default. The default visibility meant it could be seen by any verified student and teacher of the academy in the near vicinity who knows how to use this function using their respective mana sense. Aaron quickly changed the visibility to private. The butcher couldn't help flashing a cunning smile after looking at his stats. He was way ahead of his past self in the current timeline. This time he was going to tread on the right path. Jack saw Aaron giving a weird grin to the scenery down below. He thought the guy had finally started to enjoy his first flying experience. I don't know what you are afraid of, trying to take pleasure in this flight so secretly. But I'm glad that you can smile after experiencing this thing. Otherwise, I would have thought you are not normal. Aaron didn't try to correct him. He suddenly had a thought. Maybe Aaron could use the identifier function of the ID stone in conjunction with his mana sense to collect information. He thought of using it on Jake since he was nearby. The latter was still not used to the function, so he wouldn't know how to keep his BTP visibility private. Aaron used the identify function to find out Jake's BTP. He also started using the function on other people and found out other notable students' BTP by covertly roaming all over the platform. Aaron Idril 14. Jake Sullivan 10. Ivor Ozen 17. Veronica Garcia 13. Jason Storm XX. Jason had acted smartly and already set his BTP visibility to private. Veronica either didn't know or didn't care enough to keep her BTP status hidden. Ivor Ozen knew so many things. He clearly must have known about the ID stone's functions. Despite that, he still kept his BTP status open to all. Maybe he wanted some students and teachers to see how superior he was to the majority of the lot found in LA. There were a few exceptional students as well who had greater BTPs than Ivor at that time. Aaron had recorded and remembered their visible BTPs. It was always good to collect data on his potential enemies and allies. Jason saw Aaron roaming nearby his group. He wanted to talk to him. But before he could approach the guy, Aaron had disappeared from that spot. Jason smiled mirthlessly at Aaron's sneakiness. He wanted to talk to him using Matt's and Dom's subjects as excuses. But the latter didn't give him the chance. Soon, the flying platform breached an energy shield that wasn't visible from the outside. The energy shield lit up green and allowed entry to the platform. The flying platform soon landed on a space surrounded by tamed wildlife and vegetation. One could see various buildings and structures located in the distance. The students dragged themselves off the platform reluctantly. Some delayed their exit for as long as they could. But it was clear the platform wasn't going to move until all of the students got down. Rufus Rodriguez and his panel went away with the flying platform. Only a few professors and academy staff remained with the students. Oh. Old Lynn, you came back early. Weren't you taking a leave of absence from the academy? Whatever happened to that? A buxom lady could be seen coming towards the gathered crowd riding on a big and muscular colt. She looked like an Amazon warrior with light ABS over her flat tummy, complete with thunder legs, and heavy jugs that bounced aplenty as she was riding her steed uncaringly. The lady had jet black hair, olive skin, and light brown eyes. She had an hourglass shape, albeit on a heavier side. With a height of around 5.7 feet, she didn't look too tall. But still tall enough to assert her presence prominently. Good day, Lady Marla. Yeah. Something came up and I decided to postpone my previous plans. Anyway, I have a new panel now. And came with these greenhorns. Is there anyone that catches your eye? Marla could tell Lynn was changing the subject. But she didn't try to pry. She focused her attention on the first-year students and quickly found a talent within them. Marla could see the guy had progressed much further in his ranking journey than most of his peers. He also exuded an aura of maturity and seriousness. No. It wasn't Aaron. Chapter 62, Enter the Protagonist. Marla quickly found the talent she was looking for in the first-year lot. You. She pointed at one student and asked him to come forward with her finger. She looked very dominating while doing that. What's your name, boy? The boy she was talking about had short, dark golden hair and golden eyes. He was tall with clear skin that had a tinge of red. He was built muscular, a testament to his strict practice routine and sheer will. Among the bunch of boys that looked like they hadn't hit their growth spurt yet, he looked like the only one who could be called a man. The kid lacked a beard. So he still had the boyish charm accompanying him with his seemingly mature body. A deadly combination for all the young girls' fluttering hearts. Name's Ken Riverine, ma'am. Ken answered with a slight bow. His voice was firm and serene. He had the kind of bass in his voice that made him sound like an important man. A Riverine kid? From the house Earl Riverine? But I checked all the reserved seat names. Your name wasn't in them. That's because I entered the academy by clearing the entrance test, ma'am. All the students were surprised at Ken's shocking statement. He was from the house of an earl. As if that wasn't shocking enough, he didn't avail of the reserved seat quota. And entered the academy through an entrance test like a commoner. Almost all the girls had already started becoming his fangirls, commoners and nobles alike. The guys looked like they were looking at their biggest arch-rival. Even all the professors including Marla were amazed by Ken. The Amazoness couldn't help chuckling. He. Now that's what's called a hero-like entry. Kid, I have high expectations from you. Don't let me down. I'll visit you after a few days to discuss an apprenticeship under me. Of course, I won't force you to take it. You'll come to know the benefits and disadvantages of having an apprenticeship soon enough. Normally, apprenticeships start from the second or third academic year, depending upon the students and their merit points as well as their overall performance. But your BTP is already 18. You've just crossed the initial stage and entered the mid-stage of F rank. That's impressive at your age. That's why I've decided to break the unwritten rule of initiating apprenticeship in students' second or third year for you. So at least think about giving it a try. Ken's eyes flashed with opportunities. But he wasn't dense. Marla talked about the disadvantages of taking on an apprenticeship. Therefore, Ken needed to know about them before committing something this serious. He had already been given a window to think about. The scion from Earl's house decided to make full use of it. He nodded at Marla and went back to his earlier position. What nobody noticed was Aaron was looking at Ken with pure hate in his eyes. The protagonist is here. Aaron thought to himself begrudgingly. He had an old but now non-existent score to settle with this guy. He even called him the protagonist like it was some derogatory term. The vixen should be nearby if this guy has made an entry. Aaron thought about the couple that was on their way to stardom and fame in the Edinburgh Kingdom in his previous timeline. His blood started boiling even more when he thought about that vixen and finally located her in the crowd. She was glancing at Ken. Anyone could tell she was interested in him. Jake was standing nearby Aaron. He suddenly noticed a shift in Aaron's aura after Ken made his appearance. But before he could ask him about it, the butcher controlled his killing intent and made it disappear in the thin air. The students were then introduced to their dorms after being led to a distant place. The first year's dorm region looked like a medium-sized and well-structured urban township. Every 2 students would be assigned a moderately big, single-story suburban house that had 2 bedrooms, 2 restrooms, and 1 common living space. It also had a small courtyard where students could practice their combat and movement skills. The houses were a set distance of 30 meters apart from each other. The regions were divided by lush greeneries acting as the fences. The first year's canteen was a few distances away from the township. The students were made aware that the canteen had set timings for breakfast, lunch, supper, and dinner. Students had a 1-hour window for each food schedule. The next serving would only be made available at the next schedule if the students were to skip a particular time window. Aaron used his connection with Lynn and made him assign a corner house at the far end for him and Jake. Lynn had heard about the boy. That he didn't involve himself with kids his age. Therefore, he didn't mind cooperating with the same butcher that he was once hunting and currently felt hunted by. Aaron and Jake were in the same class, 1/C. And they also had podi-1ing as a common subject of interest. They were particularly polar opposite of each other when it came to personalities. And that's what allowed them to get along with each other just fine under one roof. The day was long and tiring. It was 6 p.m. by now. The sun had started to set. The students had their supper at the canteen. It didn't look like many would show up for dinner. Aaron and Jake decided dinner wasn't necessary for them either. Jake had his snacks. So he'd be fine even if he ends up waking up at midnight due to sudden hunger pangs. They both went inside the far-end house they were assigned to. The house had a security array. The energy shield was only lowered when it identified the occupant's identity with their ID stones. And it was raised back once again when they both went in. Aaron and Jake decided to call it quits early. They were going to have their aptitude test early in the morning tomorrow, followed by their consultation and their first ever lecture. The lecture would cover the Academy's rules as well as new and improved ID stones functions. Jake was excited for tomorrow. He hadn't checked his element affinity and was looking forward to prominent results. Aaron only looked excited from the outside. But he knew about his aptitude beforehand. Instead, he was looking forward to starting his revenge on people that had messed up his entire life in the previous timeline. Aaron retired to his room. And secured the door behind him with the imprinted locking array on it using his ID stone. He decided to rest on his bed as soon as he found it. Closing his eyes, Aaron thought about the one major incident in the academy that had single-handedly changed his life. It had made him considered by others as the worst student to ever graduate from LA. It had all started with a girl. Chapter 63, Sienna Slughorn. It all started with a girl. Wars are often linked with love for a reason. Aaron liked a classmate in his past timeline. Her name was Sienna Slughorn. He didn't know anything about her. All he thought at the time was she looked cute. Of course, Aaron didn't have the guts to confess his affection. But a vixen Sienna had figured it out by his shy yet consistent stares. Sienna was the daughter of a viscount. And she liked Ken Riverine, who was from an earl family. Ken was one of the top students of their year. And he looked mature and dashing. But the girl didn't only think with her ovaries. Sienna thought of elevating her family's position by being tied to the house of an earl. It would have been fine if Sienna ignored a silly crush directed at her when she had set Ken as her goal. But she decided to use that against her ordinary admirer to further her cause. This was Aaron's third academic year. Every student had selected the subject of their specializations by then. The merit points were based on the assignments belonging to such specializations. Sienna first introduced herself to Aaron, who was progressing steadily in his podi-1ing. She asked him if he could guide her in the subject. Of course, Aaron didn't need to be asked a second time. He gladly accepted her request. Sienna wasn't interested in learning, of course. She pretended for a while, then dumped all her poti-1ing assignments on Aaron. She then pursued intimacy with Ken, who was in a battle-oriented course. Aaron figured out Sienna's intentions after a few weeks of slogging his ass in her work. He was naive and inexperienced in a lot of things in his previous life. But he wasn't stupid even back then. Aaron quickly got over his childish feelings. He wanted to become a genuine potion master due to Nina's influence on him. So anyone messing with his poti-1ing routine had to be kicked out of his life. He told Sienna one day that he wouldn't do her share of assignments anymore. "Why are you acting so rudely with me, Aaron? What has happened to you?" Sienna had asked innocently when Aaron refused to keep being her clown. Like he was the one to blame for hurting her and her interests. "Stop taking me for a fool, Sienna. I have my things to worry about. So you'd have to complete the assignments given to you." What else do you do all day? It's not like you have a life outside the lab, is it? You don't have friends. You are not good at anything other than potion making. Why not spend your time completing my assignments while you are living the best time of your life with these herbs? I might consider you taking me for a date if you do that, you know. Ha! You could have fooled me. You are already trying to get in Ken's pants. But he is in a battle-oriented course that starts at the same time of the day the first year poti-1ing lab stays open. You are using me to go to his battle-oriented courses. I don't have a problem with you getting together with anyone, of course. Not anymore. But I'd suggest you pursue that relationship with your merits and efforts. Stop counting on me to save your ass from penalties that'd befall you if and when you fail to complete your poti-1ing assignments. I don't want to spend my time only completing my assignments. Unlike you, most students take this subject to create a living out of it. I'm one of them. I'll have to go beyond only completing assignments if I'm to become a successful potion master. That means experimenting with the recipes and finding my style of poti-1ing. I'll need to invest time in exploring extracurriculum potion recipes. Experiment with ingredients and draw my own conclusions from them. Study previous research papers. Read famous potion masters' books. And try to achieve 3-star standards in all the basic potions of my rank. I don't have enough time to do all this even if I don't take up your assignments. And you want me to reduce that time even further for your gains? And what would I receive in return even if I decide to do that like an idiot I was in the past? A whole lot of nothing. Fat chance of that happening, miss. If you want to be close with Ken, deal with the penalty that comes from changing the course midway and take up battle-oriented courses. Aaron refuted buying Sienna's bullshit. He had already bought enough to last him for a while. Sienna started laughing like a maniac after listening to Aaron's final refusal. You were less of an idiot than I gave you credit for. Hee. I'll admit. I was using you. But I don't see anything wrong with it. You were happy to be able to talk with a girl like me. And I was happy to allow you to do that in exchange for a little bit of favor. A dork like you should consider yourself lucky that I even allowed you to serve me. You should be grateful. But instead of thanking me, you are trying to sabotage everything for me that I worked hard to achieve. Listen carefully, Aaron. I'll only say this once. Consider it a suggestion, warning, or downright threat. I belong from the house of a viscount. You do not want to offend me. If you do this favor for me, I'll tell my family to hire you as lowliest of poti-1er even if you fail in the course. You'll earn a decent amount of money for a low amount of work. The slughorn potions are famous in the southern region. Our family operates a fair number of supply and distribution chains. And we own many potion-making establishments spread across the southern region. That's why I chose a potion-making course even when I didn't like doing it. I have to maintain the family image. So you can imagine why I can't quit this course. You are right. I'm not interested in dating you. I never was. As cliché as it sounds, the family backgrounds matter. You look all right. But you are not even a baron. And I know from a valid source that your parents have abandoned you. Your Aunt Nina is the only guardian you have. But her status as a C-rank healer can only garner her so much respect. That too is only limited to the city of Ozan. So anything happening between us is out of the question. Now that you've seen through this farce, I won't play the same card. But I know how to deal with commoners like you. Let's talk business if that's what it takes. You want to become a potion master, right? You'll have to extend this kind of courtesy to your suppliers and buyers sooner or later. Consider this extra assignment as a potion-making order from me. Furthermore, I can surely find a place for you to work in any of our slughorn establishments if you cooperate with me. But refuse my kind intentions, and I'll show you how angering me is never a good idea. Now decide, what will it be? Sienna blurted everything in one go. She stopped pretending and showed her true colors to the ex-gullible boy. When deception didn't work, she went for the carrot-and-stick approach. One had to say her upbringing as a noble young lady was spot on. But Aaron had already made up his mind by then. He would not get associated in any way with this cold-hearted vixen. Maybe you didn't hear me the first time. I told you to either quit being part of the protagonist course, or find some other way to be with Ken. But it'll have nothing to do with me. I don't want your extra money or any position in Slughorn establishments. I'm perfectly capable of securing a good position as a potion master anywhere with my merits after graduating. So now you have my decision. It's a big, fat no. Sienna's smile became even wider after hearing Aaron's response. But now that smile had a shade of viciousness. She couldn't believe the guy had grown so much spine after the realization of getting used to her scheme had dawned on him. What pissed Sienna off, even more, was the fact that Aaron had snapped out of his devotion towards her more quickly than he had gotten into it. It challenged her self-gratifying assumption that was based on pride, hubris, and self-esteem of being the most desirable girl in her class. This, to her, was even more unacceptable than just refusing to cooperate with her. Aaron. My sweet summer child, Aaron. I thought a shut-in nerd like you would know your place in the hierarchy. But turns out you are delusional. Never mind. I'll help you realize your worth. You want to be a potion master, right? I'll simply take that away from you. I'll make sure that you become anything but a potion master. I'll ensure that you become a failure in everything you do. Only after wearing the shades of despair will you be able to see what truly lies in your future. The House of Slughorn will ensure there's nobody named Aaron Elijah Edrill acting as a potion master in this kingdom. And we will place a bounty on you if you try to leave the kingdom. Prepare to say goodbye to these herbs you call your friends and this lab in some days. And remember the name that will be the reason behind your ruin. It's Sienna Slughorn. Author note, enjoy 3-chapter mini-mass release. Chapter 64, From Potiwunner to Berserker. Sienna slowly left the lab after declaring her threat. Aaron had understood that his refusal would have repercussions. But he didn't understand the severity of them at the time. Sienna had ties with the Potiwunner in charge of the first years. He would be a mad Potiwunner not to form ties with anyone from the Viscount Slughorn's house. He was the reason Sienna could dump her assignments on Aaron without anyone being the wiser. The Potiwunner in charge couldn't control everything that happens in the academy. But the first-year lab was his domain. He might not be able to grant Sienna merit points out of nothing. Otherwise, he might get in trouble after someone else cross-checks the assignments. But granting her the merit points and letting her avoid the penalty for someone else's work was still feasible. Sienna just asked the same Potiwunner in charge to make trouble for Aaron and gradually decrease his merit points after finding supposed faults in his assignments. The sold-out Potiwunner obliged. Sienna started attending her Potiwunnering assignments. But it came with a cost that Aaron had to pay for. Aaron soon found out how deep was Sienna's reach. His prim and proper potion assignments suddenly started having errors in them. He would often get mistreated by the lab staff. The Potiwunner in charge would scold him for his poor performance in front of everybody. Aaron's merit points took a huge dip as a result. He now had to work twice as hard for half the merit points just to not get flunked in the course. But that was not all. Sienna soon ranted to Ken that Aaron had tried to be all touchy with her one day when they were alone in the lab. Almost everyone knew about Aaron's crush on Sienna. The girl had made sure of that with her previous gossip. So it wasn't difficult for everyone to believe in the same. Why would a girl lie, right? Aaron was a recluse. He didn't have any friends in the academy. His connections with the academy staff and teachers were even more imaginary. The news spread like a wildfire within the first-year community. Soon the facts were twisted and Aaron became even more of an abomination than Sienna had planned for him to be seen as. She fanned the flames even further. Aaron's life in and outside the lab became more difficult with each passing day because of the naked jeers and constant threats from various groups affiliated with Sienna. Aaron's merit points soon became insufficient for him to continue studying potion making in the academy. Aaron was in his third academic year by then. Nobody would think of switching courses at this point. But Aaron did. He did not have a choice. The Berserker course charged the least amount of merit points and had many options available in LA. It accepted any students who wanted to learn the way of berserking. It was a relatively straightforward path. Aaron chose the path of a berserker when he only had 2 years remaining in the academy. Aaron had practiced a potion manufacture-centric F-rank ranking technique when he first resumed his ranking journey after breaking through into the beginner's rank. But that technique was not suitable for the path of a berserker. Aaron had to regress in his ranking journey to adapt to a new berserker ranking technique. He also had to take up compulsory battle-oriented courses. There, as if mental miseries were not enough, he faced even worse physical miseries. Sienna and Ken had become a thing by then. The girl had played her sympathy card the most. She acted like a damsel in distress whenever she saw Aaron. Of course, a few students had seen through her farce, but they too joined hands with her to gain favor from one of the biggest names in potion manufacturing. So whenever Aaron would come for a duel in the arena, he would get beaten up black and blue by members of Sienna's camp. She had again started coming to the battle courses to watch Ken's performance. She had given the same offer to someone else. And that someone couldn't refuse. Aaron was burning from within. He had not messed up with anybody. But it seemed to him that the entire academy was standing against him. Aaron was a hard-working man. He put double the efforts in the path of a berserker. But that didn't help him in stopping the constant humiliation coming his way. They called him many names: leecher, pervert, cheater, psycho, potential serial killer, charlatan, podewunner, worst berserker in history, and many more. Aaron had found a census had been raised against him. Sienna had a major hand to play in it. But most of it was due to him not having a backer to count on. Not having enough connections. But it was already too late. Even if by some miracle, he tries to form any connection and his voice gets heard, it will never be enough to wipe out his larger-than-life image of being the worst student in LA's history. Sienna had many accomplices in pulling the rug off of Aaron's feet for good. She had Vivi Lauren and Luna Salini to spread the gossip of Aaron's apparent misadventures on a lot of girls, not just Sienna. Then there was Ron Valencia and Dino Moretti, who was in the same battle classes as Aaron. They would often challenge him and beat him up till he loses consciousness. Aaron had his patience's limit breached a long time ago at the end of the academic year. Something needed to be done. He could still get a potioneer's license even after getting graduated as a berserker with Sienna's help. The license would be of the lowest grade. And Aaron would be the worst passed out podewunner from LA because of his lost practice. But even with all that, Aaron had a chance to resume being with Nina. His career as a podewunner was more important to him than his pride. Aaron decided to go with pragmatism. He decided he would say perfunctory sorry to Sienna for the things he had said. If she needs her ego soothed with Aaron's sorry, so be it. He was also willing to work for her. That's why he asked her if they could meet in private. Sienna agreed. But she asked her friends and more to stand at a distance from their meeting point in case Aaron decides to act rudely. She also made her friends ensure that no third party was there and Ken was accidentally brought to their meeting place at the right time. The evening of their meeting arrived. Aaron was at the place first and observed the surprising lack of people. But he didn't pay any heed to it. He waited patiently for Sienna to show up. Sienna had the same smile she had given to Aaron when he had said no to her overbearing demands. Aaron didn't mind himself getting ridiculed for the sake of his future. For the sake of helping Aunt Nina in her work. Aaron wanted to start right off with a sorry, but the slughorn vixen opened her mouth before him. You know, you are still as dense as you were back then. We are way past sorry and retracting our words. You are more useful to me being a useless student these days. Men's brains are as gullible as a young dog in heat. They would want to fuck anything that moves and believe in everything that would give them the treat known as self-gratification. Your infamy has become the reason for me to get close to Ken. It has invoked a sort of hero complex in him. He now sees me as someone that needs protecting. Why would I accept your apology now after achieving so much without it? In case you are wondering why I accepted your request. It was to make your case even worse in Ken's eyes than what he sees you be. Saying this, Sienna ran straight at Aaron and crashed on him. The infamous leecher and pervert was caught off guard. He tried to block her with his hands, but that only made matters worse as she grabbed his raised hands with hers and placed them on her breasts. Help. Someone help. Aaron Idril is trying to RPE me. Chapter 65, Recluse Rapist Incident. Sienna didn't waste time after assuming an ideal damsel position. Her friends had accidentally brought Ken in the vicinity by then. He heard the shout, recognized the voice to be Sienna's and rushed to the crime scene. Aaron wanted to get his hands off of Sienna. But he couldn't. He had regressed in his ranking journey due to changing his path to be a berserker midway while others only progressed. Therefore he couldn't get rid of the overwhelming BTP difference between him and Sienna even when the latter belonged to a non-combat class. Before Aaron could say or see anything, he saw a monocoated fist gradually getting larger in his eyesight. Then everything went black. When Aaron came to be, he experienced severe pain in his nose. His eyesight had become groggy. His mouth had a taste of iron in it, which was his blood due to the severe injury. He tried to fix his eyesight by shaking his head, but that action almost made him lose consciousness again. It took Aaron a while to gain complete clarity. When he did, he noticed his hands and feet were tied. He was still at the same meeting place. But now he was apparently in the middle of the crowd that was surrounding him. Aaron looked at the crowd. The people were looking at him in ridicule and scorn. Like he was the lowest human being on earth. His appearance of being bloodied with a broken nose didn't help his image either. It did not invoke the feeling of pity in any one of them. Everyone felt like he deserved it. Even friends of Sienna who had kinda guessed what must have taken place at the scene didn't feel any trace of pity for him. It was his mistake for Sienna being Sienna and him being a nobody. They would use Aaron as a ladder if they have to and a use and throw rug when they need to. Aaron saw Ken, who was looking at him with barely contained rage. He was holding Sienna in his embrace, who was weeping and whimpering on his chest. Her head had been buried in his pecs, her body glued to Ken's without any care. Ken's one hand was caressing Sienna's head while the other hand wrapped around her waist. He had stretched his legs in a flip V to accommodate Sienna, compensating for his taller stature. The guy looked like an incarnation of justice with his pose and a damsel by his side. Ken's one hand was coated in red. It was clear who had punched Aaron. But as if the real-life knockout wasn't enough, the Riverine prodigy decided to punch the guy with his words as well. "You piece of shit. You didn't have the brain to understand a simple no. So you resorted to forcing yourself on Sienna. I had told her to press charges against you when you first tried to get all touchy with her. But she wouldn't listen, saying something about not wanting to use her family name against a student with a common background. But look what that has gotten her into. She still tried to make peace with you by accepting your apology. But this is how you say sorry. This has been my eye-opener. I thought only rich kids acted spoiled and shameless. But I was wrong. The evil is in all of us, reserved ordinary, rich poor, common noble. It doesn't matter. You know what you have done, right? You have ruined the image of all common students who have worked hard to get into this academy. You have also ruined the already criticizable image of reserved category students. Sienna, listen to me. Don't back away from this now. You have to press charges against a maniac like him. Lest he becomes a threat to anyone else." Sienna stopped crying. She didn't know what to do or say. It wasn't like she didn't want Aaron to suffer anymore. But pressing charges against Aaron would backfire on her. When Sienna had claimed to everyone that Aaron had tried to breach her formal physical boundaries, according to her it happened at the potion lab when everybody had left. Aaron was only used to coming in contact with her and all the students at that time. Plus, he was used to staying late in the lab due to his additional practices. So that lie became believable. But that lie contained Sienna's lie. The lab had visual monitoring artifacts. Had she pressed charges, the visual footage of the lab would have gotten analyzed and everybody would come to know she was lying through her teeth. So Sienna played smart and skipped on pressing charges by saying something ridiculous to Ken. But the guy not only bought her BS, he even started respecting her for it. Yes, Ken was kind of a guy you'd find in hero stories acting as the protagonist while wearing the goggles of justice on his eyes. Even in this incident, Sienna didn't have solid proof. She had cleared off this area from any potential eyewitnesses that would witness anything she didn't want them to witness. But in doing so, she had prevented a valid third-party eyewitness that would hold ground against such cases. Therefore, the case would involve ranked entities if Sienna decides to press charges. Those entities could use special spells, artifacts or any other means to dig the truth out, which would again be detrimental to her. Sienna saw the hope in the lab one in charge of the first years that had come at the place as she had asked him to. The guy was completely obedient to her. He noticed her eye signs and stepped forward. "Ken Ryan, you shouldn't punch anyone outside the battle arena. It is against the Academy's rules. I will overlook this incident due to special circumstances, but don't break any more rules now. Sienna dear, tell me what you want to do now. Do you want to press charges or take a different approach?" Sienna quickly thought of a way out. She remembered her promise to Aaron at that time and decided to deliver on it. "Sir Lab in charge, I saw a friend in Aaron, but he acted in this way, not once but twice. I should press charges against him. And I want to. But I won't do that. Because the guy's base nature wouldn't change even if we throw him outside the academy and into some city prison. He would become even more dangerous than he is right now after being released. Why not change Aaron's way of life then, to make him benign to society? I propose you sign a binding contract with him that would serve as a restraining order and more. The conditions would be as follows. 1. Aaron would not harm or conspire against any of his fellow LA students consciously, subconsciously, or through any other means or personnel. 2. Aaron would not commercialize his potion making anywhere consciously, subconsciously, or through any other means or personnel. 3. Aaron would always stay within the Edinburgh Kingdom and not leave it under any condition consciously, subconsciously, or through any other means or personnel. 4. Aaron would be required to make every woman he is about to sleep with, say I know I'm sleeping with a potential rapist, and I willingly consent to it. The statement needs to be said word to word, and Aaron can't alter the words consciously, subconsciously, or through any other means or personnel. 5. The contract's duration is a lifetime. Any form of breach in any of the above-mentioned pointers would result in Aaron's mana core getting wasted and him dying immediately afterwards. Sir Lab in charge, use a C-rank contract you might have in store to bind Aaron with so he wouldn't be able to break it anytime soon. With this contract, everyone would feel safe and Aaron would be able to turn a new leaf on his life. The Viscount House's vixen came up with the harshest terms for a mana-binding contract. The first pointer was for her safety. She just added every student of LA to make it less obvious. The second and third pointers were something she had already promised Aaron to do with him. At first, she was going to use her family power to do that, but she found a more efficient way to implement her judgment on Aaron through the contract. The fourth point was something Sienna came up with on the spur of the moment. She wanted Aaron to live a miserable life. Keeping him sexually frustrated was a good way to do it. The fourth point was another reason Aaron had resorted to using an aphrodisiac on women. No sane girl in her right mind would say something like this just before they were about to have sex and still proceed with the act. Therefore Aaron had to blur their consciousness and make them say that statement word to word before proceeding forward. Otherwise, he would die if the contract breach takes place. The women would feel miserable after remembering what they had been made to say by the devil they had slept with. That's where all the disgust and dissatisfaction came from. Aaron could only find solace in hookers after the same scenes kept happening to him post his academic years. Then he found comfort in hookers who would say that statement as if it rolled off their tongues, sans the surprise and disgust. Aaron never looked back after he found professional help. Yes, he was still sexually frustrated. But he had found a channel to vent it, even if ever so slightly. Aaron didn't say anything against signing a contract. Even if he cried that he was innocent in all this, it would not help him. The crowd might even turn violent in response to his genuine pleas. And a sold-out lab in change was in cahoots with Sienna. What were his chances of finding genuine help from the academy? Almost zero, he thought. At first, Aaron had underestimated Sienna's reach. But later on, he overestimated it due to seeing the behavioral changes of entire lab staff and lab in charge. He thought there was no use going against the entire system. That's why Aaron chose to do nothing when he first heard about the fake gossip about him. He thought he was protecting himself from any potential repercussions when in fact he was making himself prone to more severe ones. Regret is a bitter pill to swallow. Aaron didn't find any other choice but to sign the contract at that time. He wasn't sure Sienna couldn't buy an academy's investigator that gets assigned to his case if he decides to reverse press charges of defamation on her. She had already bought a lab in charge. How hard would it be for her to conspire with the investigation team? The lab in charge produced the C-rank contract from his storage that he had bought by paying a huge sum of money. But he knew he'd get compensated by Sienna, so he didn't mind using it here. The contract took place between Aaron and the lab in charge. It was practically impossible for the former to break the contract from his end. Aaron read the conditions once again before signing the document with his blood. The sanguine blood was imbued in his mana that contained his mana signature. The lab in charge did the same. The contract needed a name for its completion. The lab in charge proposed a name and everyone agreed with it. The contract was given the name of LA's recluse rapist to taunt Aaron some more. The incident became famous in LA and outside it as a recluse rapist incident. Aaron's life resumed after the incident. But it was never the same. He knew he wouldn't be able to go back to Nina's place with such infamy stuck to him. Aaron didn't want to drag Nina's business down by being with her. So he had dropped the idea of going to her place after graduating. Plus, she knew about his recluse nature and his awkwardness when it came to girls. To her, that incident looked believable. At least that's what Aaron thought. The real victim of the whole incident didn't want to face his aunt's judgmental eyes too just to justify himself. He didn't want to go through another victim shaming. Aaron was a ghost of his former self. He put all his frustrations into at least passing the academy. Because that was all he could do to cope up with his mental state, channeling his energy into something that mattered to him. Aaron had always been a hard-working guy. That hard work, that sore body and worn-out sense of existence gave him the strength to sleep at night. By the time Aaron molded himself into a half-assed berserker, his academic years were over. His merit points were just enough to pass the 5th year. The damage his image took was even worse than his grades. The contract forced Aaron to not seek or apply for potioneer's license. What would he do with the real or fake license if he can't commercialize his potions? His potion-making career was over. With his infamous name, Aaron couldn't find any hunters or adventurers party to be a part of for an extended amount of time. One way or the other they'd always come to know about his academic incident. Even after the previous heat dying down on him after some years, Aaron's name again sprang up when he tried to sleep with women using roofies. Aaron stopped caring about hunting in the party when that happened. Aaron could not even leave the kingdom to seek better opportunities. He was trapped in a cell that was slowly shrinking on him. Some years after Aaron's graduation. Even with all the risks he took in his missions and all the lucky encounters, Aaron still did not manage to go beyond the initial stage D rank. Most of his successful academy peers were either on the upper stage of D rank or had already stepped into C rank. They were in a better position in terms of the ranking journey, social standing, and economical condition. A girl named Sienna Slughorn had delivered on her promise. She had sent him to his ruin while keeping him alive to experience it. Aaron later came to know that she and Ken had entered C rank together and had gotten married. Aaron was even angrier at the world and himself after knowing such news about his peers. He felt sadness, wrath, jealousy, injustice, and everything in between. So the hookers and booze became his only respite, which became his eventual downfall as well. Chapter 66, Aptitude Test. The next day, Aaron and Jake woke up early and met each other in the living room. They had their breakfast together. Jake could see a lot of groups forming over breakfast tables. He wanted to introduce himself to a few of them, but it didn't look like Aaron would join him. And he didn't want to leave the guy behind for his socializing activities. They were required to gather at a huge hall that was located inside a 4-story tall building, on the base floor. According to the board that was hung over the entrance, the building's name was Rankers Incipients. The hall room of Rankers Incipients was huge in both size and height. It had a ceiling height of 4 stories. Its length was more than 100 m. The hall had practically nothing inside as its interior compared to its large size. The students of 1/C gathered near a particular podium with the term 1/C written over it. Other students went to their respective podiums located at a distance from each other. The podium had someone waiting on them to arrive. It was Linkar with his panel of assistant professors standing behind him. Everyone from the class 1/C was present at the scene. Lin started his speech as soon as he counted the class students. Hello, students of 1/C. As most of you must already know, my name is Linkar. And I'm assigned as the homeroom teacher of your class. Before you ask or think to yourself, let me state out the obvious. My parents were very inspired by our country's founding hero, Lin Lihan at the time of my birth. That's why they chose Lin as my name, hoping I'd get as good as the kingdom's idol we all hail as Sansara sage. My father is an array master while my mother is serving in the kingdom's army as a distinguished potion master. Both of them, how should I say this? They both are sword-alike nerds with their specialization fields as their only interests in their lives. Therefore, it's not strange for them to go with the same name as the biggest nerd this kingdom has ever known, Lin Lihan. I don't know why the academy receives a few complaints every year from the students' families, saying that I've been tarnishing a great name. But let me assure you that neither my family nor I have any ill intentions behind keeping my name as linear. Now that any possible misunderstanding my name might have is out of the way, let's get down to business. I have my panel with me that I would like to introduce to you. After all, they will be the ones you'll be seeing most of the week. I'll be available once or twice every week, mostly towards the end of it, to guide you. Meet Peter Griffin. He is a capable E-class ranger. He is well versed in tracking techniques and some other skills related to hunting. This lady is Ella Thorne. She is an exceptional E-class healer. She will teach you about first aids and various natural as well as manufactured medicines you can use depending upon the terrain and situation. We have Julia Eckhart. Her class is special. Let's just say for now that she is an E-rank hunter. She will expound on how to detect illusions and counter them. And finally, we have me, Linkar. I will teach you about the fundamentals of mana arrays and their functions. Since my lecture will be once or twice every week, it'll continue for that whole day and you won't be able to attend anything else. Let's first find out about your element affinity and aptitude. Just form a queue first and I'll tell you what to do. Linkar ordered the students of 1/C to fall in line and the students obliged. Jake was standing ahead of Aaron. Lin would order the student at the front of the line to stand right over an eye of the array that was drawn on the limestone ground nearby from their gathering. Lin had already told the students that they needed to imbue their feet with their mana. The array would be lit up after absorbing that mana inside its inscriptions. The ground was inscribed with array details that would be lit up intermittently. Then a few spectral words would appear over the student who was standing in the middle of the array at the time. Soon came Jake's turn. He stood inside the array eye and imbued his feet in mana. The ground lit up once again before forming words. Elemental affinity water. Inherent nature unobstructed fluidity. Aptitude Poti 1 Array Master, Inscription Specialist. Lin had already described to students that they will have at least one elemental affinity and at least one inherent nature, and a few aptitude compatibilities. Elemental affinity was simple to understand. There were 5 great elements and a lot of derived elements. The 5 great elements were earth, water, fire, wind, and ether. The derived elements were born from the combination of the 5 great elements in various proportions and permutations. For example, ice is a derived element formed by combining water, wind, and cold fire. Likewise, the derived element of lava would be the result of the fusion taking place between earth and fire. Those who have derived elements as their affinity would also have the affinity for the elements that are involved in the derivation. That means if someone has ice as their elemental affinity, they can also be considered to have an affinity in water, wind, and cold fire mentioned above. But great element affinities granted by the derived element would be different from their normal affinity standards. That meant when one had their elemental affinity as water, their elemental affinity would not get divided. 100% of their elemental affinity belonged to the water element. But water elemental affinity granted by having the derived elemental ice affinity would prohibit the ranker from having 100% affinity in any of the involved parent elements. If their ice element is formed by 70% water, 25% wind, and 5% cold fire, then the ranker would only be able to make use of the water element with 70% efficiency. Having a derived element affinity came with its own set of advantages and disadvantages, after all. For example, the derived element affinity meant possessing inherent affinities in at least 2 great elements or more. This was a huge advantage. The ability to make use of 2 or more great elements meant having an edge over the rankers who only had 1 great element affinity in terms of variation. The ones with derived element had more spells and techniques to choose from. The disadvantage of having a derived element affinity was the lack of suitable ranking techniques to choose from. The disadvantage became even more apparent when it came to oddball derived elements like mud, haze, sound, etc. Another disadvantage of having a derived element and practicing a ranking technique related to it was the sudden increment in difficulty level when it came to progressing further in a ranking journey. A ranker practicing a ranking technique corresponding to their derived element will progress at a slower rate than their peers when the amount of effort was the same. The advantages and disadvantages of any element would usually nullify each other. So having a derived element did not mean gaining superiority over other rankers. Nor does having a single affinity in one great element means your potential as a ranker is limited. There's no superior element. Only superior ranker. This was a saying famous within the ranker communities. It accurately highlighted the importance of rankers' hard work. The term inherent nature described the way the ranker's elements would behave normally. For example, in Jake's case, his elemental affinity was water. And the inherent nature section described the way Jake's element would behave inherently. The inherent nature section would help the rankers zero in on a suitable ranking technique for themselves belonging to their element and nature. A ranker would progress quickly and efficiently while facing less obstruction if they practice in a ranking technique compatible with their element and nature. The aptitude section takes account of rankers' body stats, mana signatures, elemental affinities, and inherent natures to suggest a suitable path for them. The student would head to meet an academic staff appointed to them to discuss the path and class suitable for them, post their aptitude test. The expert would then suggest a list of suitable ranking techniques available in LA and their respective values. The experts would also suggest the students in courses suitable for their element, path, and class. Of course, these courses needed merit points too. Good thing was that the aptitude test and consultation was free. LA was heartless where it needed to but would also support the students where it deemed they needed supporting. Next was Aaron's turn. He went ahead and stood inside the array before imbuing his mana in his feet. Aaron had already taken a precaution and told Reen to wait inside his dorm room in her inorganic form. He didn't want her presence to interfere in his aptitude test. Soon Aaron's test became known to every student in Class 1/C. Chapter 67, Element of Time. Elemental affinity time, ether plus remaining great elements in differing quantities. Lightning, wind plus water plus fire. Inherent nature devour, speed, XX. Aptitude close combat expert, Poti 1er, weapon specialist, berserker. Everyone including Aaron was tongue-tied. The students and Lynn's panel were shocked because elements like time were extremely rare. There were not many suitable ranking techniques and spells available for this derived element. There was even an ongoing theory that time and space shouldn't be considered as derived elements at all. They should be counted in the list of great elements if not above them. But having a rare derived element like time wasn't the end. Aaron had another derived element affinity. It seldom happens that a ranker has 2 derived elements. And the fact that one of the derived elements was time made it even more unbelievable. Aaron was surprised as well. He thought he already knew about what element he was going to have even before the aptitude test. Turned out he was wrong. Aaron had a lightning element in his previous timeline as well. So the test showing that element wasn't surprising to him. But the element of time was something Aaron wasn't expecting. He quickly thought of the gem he was integrated with, in this timeline. The gem had to be the root cause behind his newfound time affinity, an additional trait of devouring in his default inherent nature of speed, and malleable aptitude that was compatible with so many professions. Aaron thought he had his path figured out because he already knew about his affinity, nature, and aptitude. But now he needed to rethink his approach. Lynn's panel or the available academy staff were unable to give Aaron an optimal consultation because of his time element. The element of lightning was rare and powerful. But it wasn't so out of the ordinary that the staff of LA would get stumped over. But the concept of time was elusive. It had special ranking techniques and spells. And since these techniques and spells were limited in number, they can only accommodate rankers with certain types of aptitude. Lynn's panel and the academy staff neither had anyone with the element of time in their lot nor they studied or read anything about the techniques related to time. Frankly, they were not qualified to guide Aaron. He needed special consultation. Therefore, Lynn declared that Aaron will be provided with his consultation later on by the academy after finding the right personnel to do so. Aaron agreed and went back to his place. This time his return was traced by a lot of eyeballs. The aptitude test continued. There were a fair amount of students with derived element affinities. But nobody could shock the crowd as much as Aaron did. Aaron didn't mind the attention he was getting. He knew that soon this attention would shift to other pieces of information Lynn was going to give them regarding how the academy works. Then the rat race would begin. And his existence would soon get overlooked. If he acted the same way as his past self, that is. Lynn continued his explanation after the aptitude test and the consultation for all the students except Aaron's were finished. Now that you have an idea about your element affinity, inherent nature, and aptitude, you can think about the path you want to pursue based on the given consultation and your preferences. Make sure you take your time to choose the right path for yourself. Don't rush into anything. Taking your time, in the beginning, is always better than regretting your choice later on. You'll have to regress in your ranking journey to restart with a better path if that happens. Now let's talk about lectures, merit points, and more. If you think your entry into the academy was all that was required to gain any type of knowledge LA has in store for its students, then you are wrong. LA is not a utopia from your dreams. Remember Sir Rufus' speech. You'll have to pay for gaining knowledge and everything related to it here. Of course, the academy won't suffocate the students from all sides. You have something called homeroom lectures. Whatever the homeroom professor panel teaches, it will be free of charge for that respective class. That means you don't have to pay with merit points when attending lectures conducted by me or my panel. This is only applicable for students belonging to the 1/C class. You need to find professors or assistant professors that belong to your element, class, subject of interest, or skill level yourself if the homeroom lectures are not enough for you. You'll have to pay with merit points to attend their lectures or be part of various programs organized by them. Apart from lectures, the students will have to pay for lending books from the library, various ranking techniques, spells, and everything else that is worth your merit points. The merit points can be obtained through completing training schedules, completing assignments, performing exceptionally in ranking wars and various other means you'll come to know later on. There's no scope for cheating in any form. Your bloodbound ID stone will keep track of your every progress. It will also display the number of merit points you have. Oh, right. Most of you still don't know the various functions of your new ID stones, right? Let me first list them quickly before proceeding any further. Lynn started explaining ID stones' functions to the students. Most of them were surprised. They started firing their mana senses in all the directions at once after finding out about the importance of knowing the BTP of those around them. Aaron had already told Jake about keeping his BTP visibility private. And the latter understood its seriousness and quickly learned how to save his hide for the time being. Most weren't so lucky. The students were going to act as both hunters and prey among themselves after knowing about each other's BTPs. Only then did Lynn tell them about how to keep their BTPs private. Everyone understood LA wanted them to fight among themselves. That's why they released information about BTP visibility after highlighting the importance of that particular body stat. Every student had been accredited with 1,000 monthly merit points after Lynn's panel finished explaining the functions of the ID stones and how to use merit points. Merit point was the official currency inside LA. It didn't have any physical manifestation. It would only get recorded on students' ID stones. And students would be able to carry out their transactions with each other or with LA and Academy staff using these merit points. Merit points suddenly became more important for students than the money and extol they had. But it wasn't like the eddies and extols were completely useless. A fixed amount of them could be converted into merit points. The exchange rate was subject to change on various factors. Converting real money to merit points was practically wasting money, from a layman's perspective. Oftentimes one wouldn't get their money's worth. And merit points couldn't be officially converted back into real money. But this exchange was worth it for students with heavy wallets. It had the potential of giving them the edge they were missing. Of course, there was a monthly cap involved to prevent rich kids from gaining too much advantage. But the money still played a huge part in nurturing students to their fullest. LA was an academic institute. But it needed money to run and function properly. The kingdom's grants would only cover the academy's bare necessities. It gained a huge sum from keeping the merit point system ongoing. Students got to know about the ranking wars that would start a week from now. Ranking wars had many types. There were intra-class, inter-class, and inter-year ranking wars on 1 versus 1 level. Then there were party-based ranking wars of the same types. So there were 6 types of ranking wars in total. Each came with its set of rules. Winning in the ranking wars would grant you war points. These war points would be tallied each month to declare top students in each category. These top place holders would receive additional merit points based on their position in ranking wars. Intra-class wars would take place between 2 individuals or 2 parties belonging to the same class. A student needed to participate in at least one intra-class war every week, either personal or party-based. The individuals or parties involved in the intra-class war need to bet a minimum of 100 merit points on the battle. Therefore, the winner would receive 200 merit points and the loser would gain nothing. Students needed to participate in at least one inter-class war every month, either individual or party-based. It would take place between individuals or parties belonging to different classes within the same year. The individual or parties needed to bet a minimum of 200 merit points for inter-class wars. The winner of the match would get 400 and the loser would gain nothing. And finally, the students needed to participate in inter-year wars at least once every 3 months, either on an individual level or party-based. The betting amount would be 500 merit points. Apart from merit points, the students would also receive war points. War points would be granted by the match referee. And the amount was dependent on students' battle performance. Unlike merit points, the loser of the match would also receive war points based on their performance. If the match was neck to neck, there'd be practically no difference between war points allocated to both sides. The merit points would be divided among the party members equally if a party has won the game. But the same would not be the case with war points. The number of war points would only be dictated by the students' involvement and their performance in the match. In short, there was no easy way to gain war points. The students needed to actively participate in every battle and beat their opponents effortlessly to gain maximum war points for themselves. The war points would decide the placeholders in various categories. Every set of top players from these categories would receive additional merit points by LA. Intra-class war rankings would be updated every week. Only the top 20 students, out of 100, would be considered as placeholders in this category. Inter-class war rankings would be updated every month. Only the top 100 students, out of 500, would be considered as placeholders in the category. Inter-year war rankings would be updated every 3 months. Only the top 100 students would be considered as placeholders in the category. Inter-year wars would usually take place between the individuals or parties belonging to classes that had only 1 year of academic difference. For example, battles between first-year individuals and second-year individuals. Or third-year individuals and fourth-year individuals. Therefore, to gain maximum benefits, students would participate in all the categories and score a win in most of them. They could practically double or triple the number of merit points they receive monthly by participating and winning in ranking wars. There was no such thing as ties in these matches. Either the students need to force each other to give up or make them unable to battle. If both sides are unable to continue the battle for some reason, then the result of the battle would be decided by the match referee based on their performance. The students would also receive various passes randomly after winning the matches. There were various types of passes one can gain and make use of during battles. For example, the right to battle pass would force someone to accept their opponent's challenge even if they have already participated in a similar battle. Then there was the right to skip battle pass that would allow someone to counter the right to battle pass or skip the minimum participation requirement. Then there were opponent restricting or self-strengthening passes. These passes were also individual-based or party-based. Just like merit points and war points, these passes were issued on ID stones. The spectral screen would show the number of merit points, war points, and passes available to the students. Normally these passes would only be issued by the match referee if and when the individual or a party showed overwhelming performance and won their matches spectacularly against equally tough opponents. Students were allowed to exchange these passes among themselves unless they were user-bound. These passes could be stacked depending upon their types and situations. These passes had the power to give the advantage to a weaker side to face a stronger opponent with equal footing. The students would normally store and use them only when they needed to participate in inter-year matches. The benefits of a junior side winning against a senior side were huge in terms of merit points and war points. The prestige that came with it was also incomparable. Intra-class battles were usually fought between individuals. And students preferred meeting the minimum requirements in inter-class and inter-year battles by being in a party. Intra-class battles would require students to place a minimum wager of 100 merit points. Even if they were to lose the battle, it wouldn't hurt them much. But the merit point amount of 200 and 500, for inter-class and inter-year battles respectively, was too much for an individual to wager on. The chances of losing the match were higher in these battles. So losing meant losing a hefty amount of merit points. Participating in these matches by forming a party would allow the students to share the burden. Even if they lose the match, the impact won't be that high. The only downside of party-based battles was the winning amount would be divided among the party members. In short, ranking wars had created a certain ecosystem. There would be a steady supply of merit points if students were to participate and win in these battles consistently. They just needed to choose their opponents in such a way that it would always ensure their win. That's why knowing the BTPs of your opponents was a crucial piece of information. Most students regretted not knowing how to use the ID stones functions beforehand. They could have used that information to quickly score loads of merit points for themselves. The ranking wars were going to start next week. First to start would be intra-class wars. Aaron was going to use the BTP information he gained that day to wreak havoc on the students. Jason was regarded as the new B-killer in Aaron's previous life. He had dried the merit points of so many students that they had given him this name. Just like Aaron, Jason had also collected the BTP information about all the first-year students. Aaron was the one who copied Jason's idea in this timeline. Chapter 68, E-Rank Strengthening. Lin kept explaining to his students some more nuanced details that the students would be required to know later on. He covered everything that was related to the Academy's rules and regulations. It was already lunchtime when the lecture was finished. The students rushed to the canteen and started having their lunch in a jiffy, lest the ordering window gets closed. Jake and Aaron did the same. But this time they were accompanied by a pair named Becky White and Steve Austin. Jake did most of the talking. Aaron had already known about their BTPs of 10 and 12 respectively. The ID stone was an all-purpose artifact. It could be used to make note of things the user deemed necessary. A thought was all it took to store a text. The stored data would be seen on a spectral screen and could be accessed anytime. Aaron had made a special note of any student having lower BTPs than him. He had filtered out their names on the spectral screen and made a separate list containing the same. Aaron was going to hunt for these weaklings first for an easy load of merit points. He was no fan of beating a stronger opponent than himself just to get the mental satisfaction of being a superior ranker than them. He had lived a life of old age. That age had taught him there are no benefits in cultivating hubris. Never underestimate your opponent or overestimate yourself. Because someday it'll lead you to your downfall. He felt no shame bullying the weak. He knew he'd enjoy doing it because it'd give him maximum benefits with minimal effort. Although he wasn't shy about doing hard work, he didn't like to work in vain. Steve and Becky had joined the duo because they were looking to form a party for the upcoming inter-class battle. The party needed a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 7 students to be formed. Steve would need only one more member should the duo decides to join them. Aaron gave a nod to Jake and the latter accepted their proposal to form a party. Steve looked like he wanted to say more but Aaron got up from the table, indicating their conversation was over. Aaron had not received any party request in his previous timeline. He wasn't even an F rank back then. He needed to search for people with similar bottom-tier status as him to form a party with and compete with other such students. It was an unwritten rule in the academy that rankless students will be left alone to their devices. That rule had saved Aaron from being completely eaten up whole from the get-go. Later on, when he entered the F rank, he formed a party with a few bottom-tier students. They only entered the ranking wars to meet their minimum requirements and were ready to lose some points in exchange for double the penalty they'd receive by not participating. But this time, Aaron had decided to wring these students dry of their merit points. He can't continue to crawl at the bottom tier and expect to get his hands on good things placed at the top. And Aaron won't stay a recluse either. At least he won't let his nature become obvious to guess. He needed to mix up with students while masking his ambitions and plans. He needed his presence felt just enough so that he could remain part of the crowd while trying to gain one up over it. That's why he thought of partying with Steve when the latter approached him in this timeline. The guy was aiming to become a berserker. He had the qualities of a natural leader. Steve's presence was overwhelming on and off the battlefield. And he had a good eye for people. Aaron's presence would get masked under the guy's shadow if the former made the right use of him. Aaron didn't care about Becky White. She was an average healer from what Aaron remembered from his past timeline. She didn't excel or suck in her job. Steve's team in Aaron's previous life was average at best. Only the leader stood out from the rest. It was to be seen if his party in this life would follow the same fate or break the pattern. Aaron retired to his room again. Lin's lecture had continued from where he had left off. The guy got to his core subject, which was the basic functions of arrays. Aaron could see Lin's lack of expertise in the subject. It was obvious that Lin was no genius in the field of arrays. He had been given that subject because of his parents and the guy couldn't refute the role to maintain his image of being worthy of the name given to him. Academy wouldn't do something like this under normal circumstances. That meant Lin was forced to teach and in a way relearn stuff about the field of arrays by someone higher in the ladder at the expense of students' misery. They would often get confused because of his conflicting statement in the field. Only then did the class of 1/C understand why the previous students complained about such a professor being their teacher on arrays. The honorary hunter's first name didn't paint a fair picture above his caliber in arrays. Aaron locked the door of his dorm room, took the coffee mug off his shelf, and ordered it to return to its normal form. Reen had been given the choice of either turning into a coffee mug or necklace and she chose the former. She felt her first inorganic form was the most relaxing one while she was forced to do nothing. Reen soon morphed into a mass of slime before plopping over his shoulder. Reen assumed the shape of Elena over Aaron's shoulder in a miniature form and rubbed her body off on his neck by engulfing it like a necktie with her stretchy hands. Her eyes were closed and she had a smile like that of an innocent kid while she did this act. Elena was a healer from Dom's party. She was one of the first females Reen had eaten. The slime demoness would often shift between morphing into females she had eaten so far. Aaron, why do I have to separate from you every so often? I feel lonely when you are not with me. Reen's cognitive abilities had started growing at a rapid pace. Her intelligence wasn't to be underestimated. She just lacked experience in certain things when it came to societal and human interactions. The same experiences that she was gaining slowly but surely. Reen had started realizing her sense of existence more prominently, and consequently her master's too. It had dawned on her that she missed Aaron. And Aaron's promise of feeding plenty of food to her in exchange for her prolonged inactivity wasn't going to cut it anymore. Aaron had another headache to worry about. How to feed Reen inside the academy. He certainly can't kill a student here. There were easier ways to commit suicide. That left Aaron with only a certain option. He was going to use that option extensively for the coming week to polish his combat skills and feed Reen at the same time. Don't worry, Lil Reen. This arrangement would only be for a few weeks more until I have enough merit points to get a few things. Let me get a special spell for us from the academy. Then we'll never have to stay apart from each other. Aaron assured Reen to curb her feelings of longing and loneliness. Reen agreed and started rubbing her mini Elena body on him even more. Aaron had to go all in the ranking wars in this timeline. He had many reasons to do so. One of them being Reen's problem, which needed to be sorted out sooner than later. Aaron remembered his aptitude test after looking at Reen. The newly found inherent nature of devouring must have been the result of his connection to Reen. Forming a bond with Demona Slime through blood ritual must have changed his mana signature, resulting in him gaining her inherent nature as well. Aaron wasn't sure if the gem only granted him the element of time, or if there was something else. According to Lin, the XX error was an array miscalibration error. This was because Lin didn't know about the existence of the gem inside Aaron. It would have been a normal case of miscalibration had there not been an external and extraordinary factor added into the equation. But Aaron knew the case wasn't normal. He guessed the gem would have the prowess to generate that error. Aaron didn't want to ask anyone about it and land himself in even bigger trouble. Curiosity kills the cat. And even her 9 lives aren't enough to save her hide when that happens. So Aaron didn't press Lin either and let him conclude the matter with miscalibration. The butcher thought of something and wanted to try it out. Reen, isolate this room using your mana sense first. Then armor my body like usual. Reen obliged. She first covered the dorm room using her mana sense. Then started coating Aaron's body to make him enter his devilish form. Aaron wanted her to start from the most basic power-up she could grant him. Aaron then observed the changes in his body stats using the spectral screen. As he thought, the ID stone was able to quantify the boost he received after entering the devilish form. His MP and int didn't receive any boost. But the values of HP, AGI, and STR had gone up. This affected his BTP value as well. Aaron's BTP was at 14 before assuming this form. But that value had been shot up to an incredulous number of 30, which was regarded as the limit of F rank. Aaron asked Reen to strengthen him some more and that had finally changed his BTP value to 42, in the realm of E rank. This was the limit at which Reen could strengthen Aaron before his body started facing drawbacks. This was an improvement. Aaron could only strengthen himself to the limit of F rank when he was rankless. But now that he was in the initial stage of F rank himself, he could skip an entire rank and enter E rank after Reen strengthened him. The BTP value of 42. Aaron had to field test and adapt to these strengthened body stats before he could make use of them. But he needed to be away from prying eyes before commencing his battle practices. This was tough to do in the academy. But not impossible. Aaron would need to spend some merit points to book an isolated practice room for himself. Another reason for him to earn more of them. Chapter 69, Linda's Consultation P1. 6 days before Aaron's solo intra-class ranking war. Aaron was waiting inside a simple room in the evening. The morning's lecture was conducted by Peter Griffin. He was a goofy guy but his ranger skills were good. Too bad, Aaron already knew about what the assistant professor had to say in his lectures. Aaron tried not to sleep in class due to his waning interest in the lectures. His sheer will and Peter's entertaining comments somehow managed to keep him awake. Aaron had been told to wait in this room located in another building for his pending consultation. He didn't know what to expect from this session. Even he didn't read much about the element of time despite being a D-rank adventurer in the previous timeline. A person opened a closed door and entered the room. Aaron looked back from his seat and was shocked to see someone he knew. But he masked his surprise with a welcoming smile and slight bow before that person could notice it. The person who was going to offer consultation was a woman in her 30s. She had generic features and average stature. The most highlighting part about her was her hair, which was blood red. The woman also reeked of a distinct booze smell associated with golden grain. This person was none other than Linda Cardle from Jaime's panel. Aaron had eavesdropped on the party's conversation in the Ozenwoods when it was out camping inside the forest, looking for the butcher. What they didn't know at the time yet was that the butcher got on their trail instead. Linda took her seat in front of Aaron and pulled up Aaron's aptitude test on her spectral screen. Hello, young one. Name's Linda Cardle. I serve as an assistant professor in Sir Jaime's panel. I'm told you have been detected to possess a time element and require some consultation. What have you been told by that idiot Lynn so far? Aaron was in a dilemma. Should he oppose the way Linda had addressed his homeroom teacher, or should he let it pass? This wasn't because Aaron liked Lynn and was hurt or offended by the way this drunk lady with a loose tongue addressed him, but because he wanted to maintain decorum, even if it was as true as 20 Eddie's bills. He decided to choose a middle ground. Adapt Lynn told me that someone with a time element would be better able to provide consultation. So he told me to wait till the academy finds someone. He also told me that since the element of time is rare, the techniques and spells related to it are extremely difficult to get one's hand on as well as expensive. Aaron highlighted the adapt part in his speech by speaking it a little louder before honestly telling Linda what he knew about the time element so far. Adapt was an official prefix to address a D rank entity. Similarly, the prefixes for F rank and E rank entities are novice and ace respectively. The C rank entities are formally addressed as experts before their names are called out in a formal setting. Linda nodded at him before expounding further on the subject. Indeed. Element of time is as elusive as the element of space, probably even more since there aren't many ways we humans can make use of it. The concept is too vague for us to wrap our heads around. That's why understanding the element of time and aptly employing it in your profession is even more difficult than getting techniques and spells related to it. There were not many time element rankers in the past. And those who were didn't describe enough about what they thought of using that element for themselves. The power of time manifested differently within each of them. So it was difficult to draw a linear relation. Only one thing is common among all time element rankers. Most of us have a drug addiction to deal with the side effect that comes with using time-related techniques and spells. That's because most of us have to deal with uncontrollable bouts of time dilation. Experiencing time dilation can be the most wonderful, most beneficial, most bizarre, and most horrible thing. Wonderful because it alters your perception of time than your peers around you, allowing you to experience the passage of time differently than them. Beneficial because when you see everything in slow motion, you technically have more time to think about the right countermeasures in case you are being attacked. But slowly that time dilation starts looking bizarre because no normal ranker would be able to keep up with you even when you want to have a normal conversation with them outside the battles. Practicing the element of time changes your perception of time slowly but surely. It either makes you experience things happening around you slowly or at a fast rate depending upon the technique and spells you are using. Soon you'll find that your normal sense of time is being overridden by the altered perception. Your normal sense and the altered perception, therefore, would fight within themselves to define what's normal for you. This often results in time element rankers experiencing sudden bouts of altered time perception even without them employing any techniques or spells at the time. Soon, the advantages of having a time element are overshadowed by the side effect. Experiencing a time dilation when you don't want it can make you angry and antisocial because of the frustration that comes with it. Imagine you are talking normally with your party members. Then suddenly the altered perception hits you and you have to hear their voices in slow motion. These voices stop making sense when the altered perception is cranked to a sufficient degree. And when you start talking, the party members with normal perception of time won't be able to make sense of what you said in a rapid-fire speech. Then imagine almost all human interactions like that. Horrible, right? Therefore, a time element ranker has no choice but to use some drugs to keep these bouts to their minimum or curb their effects. It can turn out to be pretty vexing otherwise. I'm no stranger to using this time-tested remedy myself. It is considered bad luck to have a time element. First, you'll have to struggle twice as hard as normal people with normal elements if you decide to continue your ranking journey while keeping that element at the center. You will have to face difficulties in getting appropriate technique and spell suitable for your nature and profession. You will have to get them at a way higher cost even if and when they do become available to you. And third, you will have to deal with the side effects. But it's not like the element doesn't come with an advantage. First, when you get a handle on your element, it becomes almost impossible for anyone to kill you instantly during an ambush. Second, you will be the most deadly force mid-battle because of your spot-on counters and extraordinary responses even by ranker standards. This is especially true for close combat experts with the time element who can tear through the opponent's defense like a thin sheet of paper. The time element mages can't be interrupted during their spell casting. That's because they're already done speaking out the incantations before their opponents thought of disrupting them. Third, elements of space and time are special in the way that they are derived from the fusion of all the great elements in different proportions. So theoretically, you'll be able to use any great element for yourself. Although you won't enjoy 100% affinity in any of them, you can introduce variations in your profession to make up for it. And finally, the fourth advantage. As the element of time is a derived element born from the fusion of all the great elements, Its spells won't create a conflict even if you decide to practice any other ranking technique. The effectiveness of the time element spells would decrease as a result. But you won't have to struggle as much to get a decent ranking technique. Neither will you have to resort to working harder than most of your peers just to keep up with them. Plus, the bouts of time dilation would be less frequent and less severe than what you'd get if you practice in the time element ranking technique. Furthermore, choosing to practice in any other element won't turn out to be a bottleneck in future when your mastery over your time element increases. You can always decide to choose a time element ranking technique the next time when you rank up without having to regress in your journey. The zero conflict advantage with other great as well as derived elements extends in this pointer as well. Even I practice a wind element ranking technique and only use time element spells related to my profession as a historian. I'm the first and as of now the only known time element historian of my or your generation currently active in the entirety of Edinburgh Kingdom. I have many advantages over normal historians, and that too when I don't even practice a time element ranking technique. Is there anything you want to ask about the explanation provided so far? Chapter 70, Linda's Consultation P2. Is there anything you want to ask about the explanation provided so far? Linda stopped her speech and asked Aaron to see if he had any queries. The latter voiced his question soon after. Ace Professor Linda, do you think the profession of a close combat expert is more suitable for me than being a Podi-Oneer according to your explanation? Aaron asked with slight anticipation. He didn't have to think this hard when he only had the element of lightning as his element. Although the great element of water was considered to be the most ideal element of a Podi-Oneer, he could do just fine using his lightning element. That's because Aaron's derived element was made from water, wind, and fire. The spells related to water and fire were very useful in potion making. So he dealt with his lack of 100% water element affinity by introducing variations in simple Podi-Oneering spells related to water, wind, and fire. But if his new time element pushed him towards being a close combat expert, then he'd have to rethink his priorities. He'd still walk the path of a Podi-Oneer. It's just that he will have to prioritize being a close combat expert more. Yes and no. If you can get time element spells related to the profession of potion making, the element will play a vital role. If not, then being a close combat expert will be more suitable for you since it is relatively easy for you to get the elemental spells related to that profession. Do you know why I called Lynn an idiot after looking at the result of your aptitude test? It's because of his remark of calling the XX entry in the inherent nature section a miscalibration in the array. Technically he is not wrong. But he has failed to understand what caused that miscalibration. The array used for aptitude testing works on previous database entries of rankers that have been accumulated over a long period. Your mana signature changes according to your element, inherent nature, and a lot of covert and overt factors about you. Theoretically, even the minutest of changes in rankers' ranking journey can be traced and deduced with their mana signature. Of course, the array used for the aptitude test isn't that advanced. But it doesn't have to dig deep into the rankers' past who have just started their ranking journey. The purpose of maintaining database entries of such mana signatures generation after generation is so that the array can find a few close matches to your mana signatures and predict what professions will suit you best based on those matches. Inherent nature is something that has been categorized by very high-ranked entities after considering a large sample size. Since the mana signatures reflect the trait of the rankers, it also becomes possible for rankers to predict the mana signatures based on their traits. This linear relation is the principle behind the functioning of the array. The array would show blank space or XX error when it doesn't have a matching entry in its database. This is extremely rare considering the database has been nurtured for so many years now. But it couldn't be helped since the case was related to someone with a time element. The rankers belonging to the time element are rare. So the sample size of time element database entries is restricted as well. The XX means there's no entry of another time element ranker with a similar mana signature as you. The inherent nature of your time element is different from what had been observed and recorded in the database so far. Lin couldn't understand the reason behind the miscalibration even after studying and teaching arrays for a living. Hence I called him an idiot. The knowledge of one's parents won't get automatically transferred in the child's brain after all. Lin should really think about changing his first name. It's an insult to the Sansara sage, having this ill-informed array master teaching stuff about arrays to gullible students, as someone who shares his first name. Anyway, coming back to your problem. I checked your aptitude test results and they are pretty skewed if you ask me. Your time element doesn't have a known inherent nature as displayed by the XX. Then you have another derived element in your arsenal that has 3 great elements fused into it. But even after all these anomalies, the professions you can opt for remain relatively traditional and well known. I can understand the compatibility for a close combat expert and weapon specialist because of your lightning element and inherent nature of speed. Element-wise, you are not a perfect match for potion making. But since your file record mentions your guardian as a C rank healer and a Podi-Oneer, I can imagine you must have dabbled in making elementary potions from a very early age. And that is reflected in your mana signature now. But the inherent nature of devouring isn't linked with either of your derived elements. Plus, you even have a berserker listed in your weird aptitude compatibility choices. If I didn't know you were a 16-year student, I would have believed the person undergoing this test was a beat-up ranker who had probably dipped his luck in a lot of professions before finally deciding to focus on a single path. Your mana signature is convoluted enough to derive such an assumption. Do you know what's even weirder? Your time element hasn't influenced your aptitude compatibility choices as far as I can tell. It's like someone has lent you their elemental affinity. Which is as bizarre as it is far-fetched. Maybe your mana signature has two or more polarizing attributes that sometimes complement and sometimes create conflict with each other. We are never really entirely sure about anything when it comes to time element rankers. So I'll conclude my consultation by keeping things simple. I'd suggest you choose the easy way. Focus on getting an F-rank lightning element ranking technique related to the profession of close combat expert first. Keep everything related to time element ranking techniques on the back burner for now. Think about getting them once you have broken into D rank or above. Prioritize finding attacking type time element spells related to the profession of close combat expert or any other suitable profession. And then include them if and when you can in your battle style. You can keep treading on the path of being a poti oneer, thanks to your derived element of lightning. You'll need to work hard, but you'll eventually get the results you want with enough investment. Are there any other queries you have? Had it been Ken Riverine in Aaron's shoes right now, he would have chosen to go for the most difficult path like a true protagonist he was. He would have opted for a time element ranking technique to practice from the get-go. And then he would dominate everyone on his level with his focus, commitment, and sheer fucking will. But Aaron was not like Ken. He agreed with Linda's practical consultation. The butcher was not looking to cut corners in his hard work. But a particular path's efficiency was equally important to him. That's why he deliberated hard over choosing the right profession in this timeline. Otherwise, he would have opted for the path that he was most familiarized with, the path of a berserker. Aaron knew what Linda was talking about when she said it seemed that element of time was something that was lent to him. He knew this was due to the incorporation of that gem. It was the gem's power manifesting in Aaron's elemental affinity and inherent nature. He preferred polishing what belonged to him first before working on the power that he wasn't familiarized with for the time being. So he chose to go with Linda's consultation. He declared his intentions to Linda before taking his leave. Linda was left alone in the room, seemingly brooding over something. It wasn't apparent with her cadence, but a sudden bout of time dilation had struck her when she had entered the room. When a ranker is proficient enough in their innate powers, they tend to activate their powers subconsciously using the honed sixth sense. Therefore she could minutely observe Aaron's changing facial expressions before the latter took note of the event. Why did this kid act surprised when he first saw me? Does he know me? And if he does, why did he mask his expressions quickly after? Linda was trying to come up with an answer but she couldn't find anything on the kid. She just shook her head and decided to give up on those trains of thought. For now. Chapter 71, Bisank. Aaron went to his dorm room after that and told Reen to change into a necklace. He immediately wore the same and made his way to a particular facility that looked abandoned. The first-year students were still learning about things inside the academy and they were yet to realize the importance of this facility. The evening had started to set in by the time Aaron had exited out of the room post his consultation with Linda. So he didn't feel like resuming to attend Peter's lecture. Aaron wasn't interested in homeroom lectures at all. None of the professors could teach him what he needed to learn the most. He needed to find other lecturers and attend their lectures by paying with merit points. But before he started spending his merit points, Aaron needed to secure a stable way to earn them. That was the reason for his arrival to this particular facility known as Regulatory Board for the Lionheart's Beast Sanctuary, aka Bisank. Bisank had adopted the setup of a typical adventurer guild to make the students get familiarized with how the adventurers worked and their way of life. It regulated a large area known as the Lionheart Beast Sanctuary that spanned across the southeastern side of the academy grounds and a small part of the gigantic forest known as Themyscira's Amazon. A matriarchal tribe was settled at the border of Lionheart Beast Sanctuary that separated it from Themyscira's Amazon. The academy grounds borders ended before the sanctuary, allowing for a neutral zone forming in the middle. This neutral zone would be visited by both LA students and the Amazons. The academy had cordial relations with the Amazons. They had been given the autonomy to rule their lands by the Edinburgh Kingdom and other kingdoms which had their presence in their respective territories. The tribe located at the border of the sanctuary was only a small part of the Themyscira's might. Coming back to LA. The facility for Bisank boasted a large hall. The inside of the hall was flickering with many spectral screens. This was the facility meant for every student of the academy, not just the first year. The fifth-year students were completing their on-field experience programs. And most of the second to fourth-year students were on their long holidays. Only a few students had decided to stay inside the academy. And yet, Bisank was filled with second, third, and fourth-year students. This wasn't surprising. The students who had remained in LA during the long holidays were the ones who either didn't have a family/guardian to return to, or they were too focused on their studies to care about anything else. Either way, accepting and completing missions issued by Bizank was a good way for these students to spend time and practice whatever they learned so far while earning merit points. The flickering and ever-changing screen contained a lot of information regarding the sanctuary that might overwhelm a first-year newbie. Aaron acted like a newbie from the outside too. But he wasn't excited at all from the inside. Aaron's last 2 years in the academy from the previous timeline were mostly spent in the sanctuary. He had only 2 years to at least become a passable berserker. So the Bizank and the sanctuary were more homely than his dorm room for him during those times. Aaron went towards a counter that catered to first-year students. The blonde girl wasn't expecting any student to visit her window anytime soon, so she was surprised by his entry. "Hello, ma'am. Name's Aaron Idril. I want to register myself in the Bizank as an apprentice adventurer." Boy, Bizank on-field demo program wouldn't start for first-year students for another 2 or 3 months. We are yet to arrange the adventurers that can lead you. Come back after Bizank releases a circular notice for your year. Ma'am, your name is Charla Hinskin, right? It seems there's a bit of misunderstanding. I'm not here for the on-field demos. I'm here to register as an apprentice adventurer so that I can take up missions. The first years can register in the Bizank after breaking into F rank, right? I'm a verified student of LA and also an F rank. And my BTP is 14, which meets the minimum requirement set by the Bizank. The Charla was again taken aback by the first-year greenhorn's knowledge about the Academy's rules. He even knew about her names. Although this wasn't impossible for a first-year to know about her name, she still found it surprising. The kid looked plain, but his presence after he spoke exuded a kind of confidence Charla had often found in the experienced adventurers. "All right. Allow me to scan your details." The blonde receptionist quickly got over her surprise and resumed her formal way of attending to apprentice adventurers. Aaron soon received a prompt on his spectral screen. Bizank, verified, wants to access your personal and academic information. Would you like to proceed? Aaron mentally selected the yes option and his information was transferred to the openly visible spectral screen in front of the receptionist. Charla confirmed his details, especially his BTP, before proceeding to send a Bizank membership token on his ID stone. It seems everything is in order, Aaron. Let me warn you about a few things now that you've officially entered into the Bizank. Don't head out to complete even the simplest of missions before getting your hands on suitable ranking techniques and spells. Otherwise, even a simple grab dash and fetch herb deposition mission would turn out to be deadly for you. Your privacy is always respected by the Academy. But all bets will be off if a student dies in the forest and you are found to be involved in any way with that case. The tracking data will be retrieved from your ID stone and you will be punished by the law if found to be guilty. So don't commit any crime. Always make a habit of checking out the updated map published by the Bizank over your spectral screens and open screens placed inside the Bizank's hall. This will allow you to know a lot about the forest's current power structure, its terrain, magic beasts' population density, and their distribution, among other things. The information can turn out to be life-saving if you draw your plans related to the missions accordingly. You can choose to share your location on the map to the Bizank network or only with your peers upon your choice. Or you can choose to stay hidden. The ones with their location encrypted will also not be allowed to know about the others' information. The missions need to be completed within the due times mentioned in their details. Start from the missions that have the lowest BTP requirement and gradually move towards accepting more challenging missions. Don't get blinded by the merit points certain missions offer. Choose missions that are suitable for your element, class, and BTP. You are allowed to stay inside the sanctuary for up to 3 days at a stretch unless you take prior permission. If you fail to show up at the Academy's border checkpoint within 3 days, you will be considered to be in danger. Your right to privacy will be overridden and a retrieval team will be sent to your location after tracking your ID stone. You will be taken back by the team even if you are found to be not in any form of danger. A penalty of merit points will be raised against you. So you'll either have to pay the amount upfront or in installments. Don't go solo for beast subjugation missions. Form a party of 5 or 7 students to complete them. If you don't know anyone, you can request Bizank to form a party. We will send a prompt to other students' personal screens, and they will join you after knowing about the mission details. Is there anything you want to discuss or ask? No, Miss Charla. Don't worry. I'm only going to claim the missions for today. I'll only head out when I have a few spells in my arsenal. I'll take my leave now. But not before confessing that your beauty exceeds the rumors that have been spread about you among the first-year students. It was my pleasure to meet a stunner like you. Aaron complimented Charla in passing. The previous Aaron wouldn't have done anything like that. But Aaron of today knew women like to be praised every so often. Aaron wasn't technically breaking LA's rules by accepting missions right after entering the academy. But he was surely bending them in his favor. Therefore, he needed to smoothen out any friction that might arise due to it in the future. Aaron's smooth compliment had its intended effect on Charla. She smiled at him and allowed him to proceed further. Aaron did not have any questions regarding the information Charla had provided him. He already knew about how Bazank worked. But he still let her finish what she needed to say as a formality. A new subscreen was available for Aaron to see after that. It had the title of Bazank. Aaron slightly bowed to thank Charla before heading towards a big spectral screen displayed in the hall that was titled Available Missions. The minimum requirement for accepting the available missions was a BTP of 14. Aaron had barely made it. But the butcher had the advantage of being a first year. He would be prioritized by Bazank's system over his seniors for low-level missions. For example, if there's a mission with a minimum BTP requirement of 14, then that mission would remain unclaimed for a certain period unless a first year claim it. Only when there's no first year would the mission go towards the senior year students. Emergency missions and extended missions came with their own guidelines. But generally, first year students would be prioritized for low-level missions in all categories. The newbie students were not allowed to take up any missions that crossed a certain BTP value. But anything below that could be easily claimed by them. Low-level missions produced relatively lowest gains in merit points. But they were easier to do than normal missions. A student would gain maximum merit points with minimum efforts if they could chain these low-level missions together. Aaron was aiming to do exactly that. Author's note got a little delayed, but here are the 2 extra chapter releases. Chapter 72, Effective Use of a Protagonist. A student would gain maximum merit points with minimum effort if they could chain the low-level missions together. Aaron was aiming to do exactly that. Generally, the low-level missions would be released every day and get refreshed within a week. That meant there were around 7 sets of missions for each day of the week. Each type would be released on that specific day and would be available for the next week after someone had claimed them. But that also meant students would need to wait for a day or in the worst case an entire week to claim these low-level missions if someone pulls a fast one on them and takes all such missions from a particular set for themselves. Aaron was going to claim all these low-risk high-return missions in one go so that he could earn maximum merit points during this week. Aaron had stolen this idea from Ken Riverine of the past timeline. In that timeline, he was the one who took all the newbie missions to himself and faced the wrath of second-year students who were aiming for these exact missions. Aaron first went to Bazank's public restroom. He secured a cubicle and called forth his demon beast that was hanging by his neck in the form of a necklace. He had brought her here for a very special purpose. Not to attack someone but to make a fool out of his seniors. The butcher told Reen to coat his body in such a way that he looked taller and muscular. He had an image in his mind and Reen could see it with her mental connection with him. So she knew how Aaron wanted her to make him take the shape of. This process only had one flaw even when the shape and stature of a person were nailed down to a T, and that was the way Aaron looked. He still looked like a devil who seemed to have a blurred body. Aaron was yet to overcome this drawback. But he already had a plan in his mind. His blurred body would not cause any problem if it can't be seen. He did not do anything with his face, but changed into a full-sleeve cotton shirt and wore a hooded jacket over it before covering most of his face with it. His legs seemed weird due to Reen's leg extensions to make him look taller than he was, but they were covered with his loose pants. Aaron looked completely different from his usual appearance. He got out of the restroom after confirming his look. Then he went near the big screen and his personal Bazank spectral screen got automatically in sync with it. Aaron immediately filtered out a list of all the missions that had the minimum BTP value of 14. There were 49 such unclaimed missions. 30 missions belonged to today's set. And remaining ones were pending missions from the day before, which would soon be allowed to get claimed by senior students. Aaron accepted a huge lot of the missions in one go. They appeared on his personal Bazank screen with the tag of pending in front of them. They all had a time limit of a week. He'd face a penalty of merit points in case he fails to complete them during that window. A huge chunk of screen space on the big spectral screen was blanked out right after that. It was a very eye-catching scene. Aaron had not claimed all the missions. He purposely left a few missions for a certain someone. Just as he thought, Aaron's claiming of sweet pie missions had created a commotion in the Bazank Common Hall. This had to be done by a first-year newbie because the missions that had disappeared were not open to senior years by then. A lot of senior students were angry. They had just lost a stable source of merit points income because of a single first year. The students were angry at Aaron not only because he had accepted all these missions without caring about them, but also because they didn't dare to do so when they were in their first year. They felt that Aaron was breaking the tradition they were forced to follow. One such person from the senior year couldn't keep quiet after experiencing the brazen breach of the unwritten rule observed among all of the LA students by a mere first year who hadn't even completed a week on the academy grounds. He forcefully suppressed his rage from seeping into his voice before addressing Aaron. "Kid, I suggest you drop the missions that you've taken just now and make them go unclaimed again. You will lose some merit points as a penalty, but it won't be that much since the time of acceptance and release is almost negligent. Do this and we'll forgive your disrespect towards your seniors instantly. Refuse, and we'll make sure that your first year becomes a memorable experience for you if you know what I mean. So, what will it be? Aaron heard the threatening speech coming from behind him and couldn't help smiling wickedly under his hood. He feared there's no retaliation and his efforts to take on an altered visage would go to waste. Thank the devil there was one such side character still available in the hall. These missions are meant to be taken by first-year students. Why are you trying to complete them instead of claiming the missions with higher BTP requirements and bigger rewards? That's none of your business, you arrogant brat. Just consider it as a way to respect your seniors. Now release the missions you've taken just now. I might let you keep 1 or 2 of them if you behave obediently. Or what? I don't care about seniority, you pathetic piece of shit. I'm not releasing any of the missions I've taken so far. And not only the set. I'll come again to claim the next set of such missions. And a set after that. What will you do about it? What can you do about it? Aaron insulted the guy and claimed that he'd come again to claim missions from the upcoming sets. The guy was incensed after hearing Aaron's naked disrespect towards his seniors. By then other seniors had joined the guy who had stopped Aaron. The group of seniors had decided that this rude first year had to be taught a lesson. They would have never imagined in their dreams that a newbie would dare to not only raise his voice against the seniors but also diss them in such a way. Brat, I see that you've become a little rusty in your manners. Never mind. Life in the academy can teach you many things. You have to go inside the forest to complete your missions right. Make sure you don't trip over something. Otherwise, the bones of your hands and legs might get broken, you know. Ha ha ha. The senior student spoke and chuckled to himself. He was joined by other seniors who had started jeering at him. Aaron didn't have a shred of anger in his voice. He replied with the same calmness that his body was oozing out at the time. Are your threats even threatening enough if you have to say them in such a roundabout way? What can I expect from a fat-ass senior like you? Have the guts to state your threats openly if you have balls between your legs, you scared little chickens. If you want to come at me, fucking come at me with all you got. Don't try to brag your ass in front of your crowd. Why don't you cut off your limp DCKS if all you seniors can ever do is shame your manhoods by trying to scare a first-year student with your words and miserably failing at it? More seniors had started circling the duo of Aaron and the guy who was facing all his taunts head-on. The faces of all the seniors were twisted after they heard Aaron's blasphemous words. Before the senior student who has spoken till now could voice his rage, another second-year student had come forward and spoke with more authority than the former. That's it, kid. Do you want naked threats? I'll give you naked threats. Drop the missions you've taken just now and we'll spare you after roughing you up in the forest. Otherwise, forget about walking effortlessly for the coming weeks. We'll FCK you so bad, you won't be able to get out of your dorm room, much less take on any more missions. The crowd of seniors heard a vicious laugh coming from the first-year guy standing right in the middle of them without any worry. They got tense after hearing his next words. Ha 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 ha. It's the first time in my life that I've received a direct threat. This was fun. Come then. I'll take you on. The forest will be our battleground. I'll teach you that there's no such thing as seniority that you so cherish and go gaga over without having sufficient power to back it up. And remember the name of the guy who will be kind enough to teach you this hard lesson in life. It's Riverine. Ken Riverine. Chapter 73, F-Rank Spells. It's Riverine. Ken Riverine. The first year left the scene after stating out his name ever so proudly. Only then did the seniors get to know why this greenhorn was daring to cross with them with so much confidence. He was from the house of an earl. Most of the seniors started regretting jeering at the guy. What if uses his mighty house's power to mess with them? But not all the seniors thought like this. Especially not the guy who was the last one to speak to Ken. He spoke out after Ken left and gave some assurance to the senior students around him. This Ken is a fool if he thinks his family name can safeguard him inside the academy. LA is the sole judge, jury, and executioner on the academy grounds. As for the outside threats coming from the house of Riverine, my family will manage them. Name's Rudy Orton. My family is only a viscount for now. But my father serves in the royal court. He is enough to prevent the house of Riverine from acting out as long as we don't kill the guy. Maybe the kid would realize his mistake later in the day after carefully thinking about it. We'll give him some time to do just that. But we'll make sure to make a better man out of him if he doesn't listen. A few of us need to be looking out for Ken tomorrow at this place if he decides to show up and pull the same stunt he pulled today. If he does that, I swear to all the things I hold dear, I'll fuck him up to 6 ways to Sunday. Rudy assured the crowd with his name before declaring his stance. The students overcame their fear due to that and realized this was indeed LA grounds. There was no king or slave among them. They had seen the rich kids struggle the same as them in this academy. And Orton's family was there to take care of the outside threat. Of course, Most of the senior students didn't believe that Rudy would uphold his promise once he took care of Ken. They needed to publicize the matter between Rudy and Ken to make him accountable. The senior students had decided to blame everything on Rudy for whatever happened to Ken. A silent agreement was passed within the crowd. Unknown to all this, the protagonist, the real Ken Riverine, was going to come tomorrow to accept the same type of missions Aaron had accepted. And then he'd get caught in a mess Aaron had created for him. Ken had accepted the same type of missions in the previous timeline. But he was aware of the unwritten rule. He didn't like to disrespect his seniors, so he had only accepted the half of missions that Aaron had accepted in number. Plus, he didn't act this rudely to his seniors when he was confronted by them. So the repercussions Ken faced in his previous timeline were lighter in nature. They became a driving force for him to improve himself and beat the same seniors in inter-year battles eventually, making his name known across the students of all years. But this time, Ken had taken almost all the sweet pie missions and dissed his seniors horrendously. Only time would tell what his state would be after this timeline's repercussions befall him. The fake Ken found another facility and restroom inside it to change into his original form. Reen returned to being his neck pendant. Only then did Aaron, who also looked like Aaron, make his way towards another facility. Aaron was no fan of having an entourage of senior students hindering him while he roamed the forest to complete his missions. He had the protagonist shoulder all his burdens like a good guy he was. Although the senior students might realize the guy who dissed them and the real Ken were two different guys later down the line, a rift would have been formed between them and the House of Riverine. Both sides would get too busy within themselves against their will to care about any other first year after that. Just as what happened in the previous timeline. This timeline's outcome was going to be the same as the previous timelines. Only its severity had been altered. And Aaron had intercepted the process in the middle and took all the benefits for himself. Whatever happened to Ken or the senior students after his actions weren't Aaron's headache. He was in a hurry to collect more merit points for himself so that he could use them all in one go during a particular event. Aaron found the building he was looking for. It was named Novice's Treasury. It was kinda a sacred place for all the F-rank students. It contained all the ranking techniques and spells the Academy had to offer for all the novice rankers. Aaron was here to get his hands on the most basic lightning element spells. He didn't need them for his missions inside the sanctuary because he had Reen. But the entry of his acceptance of spells was needed in case Basang checked his pre-mission battle status. The Butcher was going to hold on to get a ranking technique. Even the lowest of a lightning element ranking technique would cost him a lot in merit points. But the real issue wasn't just the wastage of merit points. Aaron knew he was going to get his hands on a better ranking technique within a week. Why would he even start practicing a ranking technique for a few days only to abandon it and make all the efforts go to vain? Of course, not having a ranking technique was going to affect Aaron's post-battle recovery. But that was something he could manage somehow. He just needed to make sure that he doesn't engage in a situation that he can't deal with quickly. If everything fails, he still has Reen, who he will call forth only as a last resort. Aaron found himself in front of another counter. The receptionist was a male. Aaron asked him about the lightning element spells in F rank, with each of them having a cap of 100 merit points. The latter sent him a list on his spectral screen in response. F rank spells. Filtered out by the cap of 100 merit points and arranged in descending order. Blitz steps, 3-star, 100 merit points. XX, XX, 100 merit points. Blitzerung, 2-star, 100 merit points. XX, XX, 89 merit points. Rayo, 2-star, 87 points. Blitzstrom, 3-star, 85 points. XX, XX, XX. Aaron had zeroed in on spells named Blitz Steps, Blitzerung, Rayo, and Blitzstrom. They would collectively cost him 461 merit points that would get taken out from his current balance of 1000 merit points. Blitz Steps was a movement type spell. It would make Aaron's feet get surrounded by tongues of lightning and increase his speed after he channeled his mana in a specific way. Blitzerung was a defense type spell. Meant to be deployed at crucial times. It would create a layer of lightning around Aaron that would last for a few seconds before disappearing. Rayo was a solo attack spell meant for close combat style. It would generate a slim rod of lightning from Aaron's index finger that would have a high penetrating power. And finally Blitzstrom. It was an AoE spell meant to be released when the user gets surrounded by enemies from all sides. It would generate untamed lightning streams that would wreak havoc around the area with Aaron in the center. Aaron had covered his basic needs of movement, defense, attack, and AoE with these spells. Chapter 74, Converting Ixtals into Merbs. Aaron had covered his basic needs of movement, defense, attack, and AoE with the spells he had selected for himself. The stars in front of the spells conveyed their effectiveness. Spells are also ranked as per their usage by ranked entities. That means there are F-rank novice spells for F-rank novice rankers, E-rank ace spells for ace rankers, D-rank adapt spells for adapt rankers, and so on. Each rank spell further gets divided into 5 grades or stars. A 5-star spell of a particular rank will have the highest potency and effects than any of its lower star counterparts within the same rank. 1 star, initial grade. 2 star, mid grade. 3 star, upper grade. 4 star, peak grade. 5 star, supreme grade. Each rank spell is only suitable for a mage in that same rank. That means an F rank entity in any stage can use the F rank spell of any star. But they cannot use even the initial grade spell of E rank without facing severe consequences. Of course, a higher star spell was more expensive than its lower star counterpart in the same rank. The 5-star spell was the most expensive of all its lower star variations. Furthermore, defense type spells were usually more expensive than attack type and movement type spells. That was because they were few, especially when it came to derived elements. Plus, the students could not neglect their defense no matter which class or path they choose for themselves. So paying a higher amount of merit points for a 2-star defense type wasn't questioned. Aaron informed his spell choices to the receptionist. In return, the latter sent him a deduction request worth 511 merit points. The extra 50 merit points were processing charges. Aaron clicked yes and his points were deducted. The receptionist handed him 4 scrolls after confirming the merit points deposition. The scrolls seemed new because they were recently created for the current first-year students. The data on the scrolls could be digitized and stored on an ID stone. But LA prevented students from doing that without buying the spell scrolls first. First, the Academy wanted the students to have a physical copy of the spell scrolls in case their ID stone stopped functioning due to various reasons. Second, it wanted every student to pay for every spell they take with their own merit points. Otherwise, there were ways to share the digitized copy among students through their respective ID stone spectral screens without involving LA in the transaction. The Academy wanted the merit points economy to thrive. And this would have been detrimental to their cause. Of course, the students were allowed to store the data printed on the spell scrolls onto their ID stones after completing the transaction with the Academy. They were just prohibited from sharing the data with any other student. Aaron had to sign a D-rank binding contract with the receptionist. The surcharge of 50 points was due to this contract. The contract was placed upon the students to assure that they would not illegally share the contents of the spell scrolls they received. Sharing would be prohibited to any entity related or unrelated to the Academy, as physical or digitized copies, consciously or subconsciously, through themselves, other personnel, or via any other means. The contract covered every possible loophole the potential contract breachers might use in their favor. Every student had to sign these contracts before receiving the spells, ensuring that the spell scrolls don't get copied and shared across the crowds of students. Aaron wasn't going to share his spell scrolls anyway. He didn't mind signing the binding contract. But receiving spells was not the sole reason he had come to this facility. "Sir, I want to convert my extals into merit points." The butcher declared his second reason for being there. He had already exchanged the extals he had received from Isaac and his team with different ones in the city of Lionhearts when he was roaming its streets with Jake. He didn't want those extals tracked to him, after all. Even if LA wasn't seriously looking into Isaac's case, they were still all Academy students. Aaron didn't want to give the case a breakthrough at his expense. Kid, are you sure? The extals could still be used on the Academy grounds for various facilities. The extals, once converted into merit points, can't be given back to the students even if they get ready to pay a higher exchange rate in merit points to do so. The receptionist warned Aaron. He couldn't be blamed. The butcher didn't look like he was born rich with his visage or his clothes. "I'm sure, sir." "What is the current exchange rate?" 135 merit points for 1 extal. "Not bad. I was expecting an exchange rate of 140 merit points/extal. But this is not out of my expectations either. The rate would only get worse in the coming days as more students opt for this way. I should exchange more than half of the extals I have with merit points. I'll store the rest of the extals for emergencies." Aaron thought to himself before replying. "That's fine. Sir, I want to convert 100 extals into merit points." Aaron said this before taking exactly 100 extals out from his storage space. The receptionist opened his eyes wide in surprise after looking at the kid, his clothes, and then at the amount of extals he had so casually produced in front of him. The receptionist of Novice's treasury thought the greenhorn in front of him must have exhausted all his extals reserved to earn merit points when the exchange rate was relatively favorable. He appreciated the lad's boldness and decisiveness when it came to exhausting his wealth for his education. "All right, kid. Let me analyze the extals first before transferring your merit points." The receptionist made Aaron place all the extals he had onto an array that had been lit up on top of the reception desk. The said array lit up and confirmed the authenticity of every extal. The butcher received 13500 merit points quickly afterwards. American Samoa, a one-time payment for all the wealth that he had just emptied on LA. "Kid, Do you want a lightning element ranking technique? I can give you a 4-star technique in that element for just 10k MERPs, merit points, if you want. We keep limited copies of this technique and won't sell another one for a certain period unless there's a special case. The ranking techniques were categorized by stars as well, just like the spells. They were tremendously more expensive than buying a few spells. Usually, students would only be able to afford a 3-star or lower grade ranking technique after a few months when their MERPs reached a satisfying level of deposition. This was detrimental to most of the students' growth as they won't be able to progress in their ranking journey without these techniques given to them. But LA could also not just circulate these techniques among students as freebies and demean the techniques' values. It would be taken as showing disrespect to the creators who crafted these techniques. And students would also stop working hard for these techniques if they were to be easily made available. That's why the Academy would organize an auction event for the students every once in a while. This event would allow the students to get the techniques they want at a relatively lower amount of MERPs. Students would have different inherent natures even if their elemental affinities were to be the same. So they won't face much competition for getting a compatible technique for them. The students would still have to cough up a decent amount of MERPs. It is just that the amount won't be breaking their banks and backs in the process. Furthermore, the students could also place any valuable item they have for the auction event. The Academy would only charge a meager amount of MERPs and the rest of the buying amount would get deposited to the original owner's account linked with ID Stone. The free flow of MERPs would facilitate students paying more extals and any other form of wealth at expensive exchange rates. This would result in LA getting the best out of every deal the students make for themselves. Coming back to Aaron's current predicament. He wanted to invest his newly earned MERPs into the 4-star technique, which the receptionist metaphorically dangled in front of him like it was some form of bait. But Aaron knew that the very first auction event for the first-year students would be organized a week from now on. That's the reason he was desperate to earn merit points before the end of the week at the risk of offending his seniors. A risk he had now outsourced to Ken Riverine. The Academy would also control the number of spells and techniques it distributed to the students from a particular academic year. This was done so that the students won't copy each other and end up colluding their ranking path due to someone else's unhealthy influence. Aaron didn't attend the auction event in his previous timeline because he wasn't an F rank back then at this period. He was still practicing the Edinburgh traditional technique for rankless entities. So the auction event wasn't useful for him. That's why Aaron didn't know what to expect from the event. He wasn't sure if he could find anything worthwhile in the upcoming event for himself. Almost nobody would be aware of the auction event, including most professors and their respective panels as well as the Academy staff. LA made sure to keep it that way. Otherwise, the rich students would start converting their wealth into MERPs at relatively profitable exchange rates for themselves before the start of the event. The Academy would be forced to hand out MERPs at lower prices than their expected hike. It could not raise the exchange rate before the news of the event spreads forth. It could also not circulate the news earlier than a day before the event takes place. Or else it would break the most fundamental rule of business, i.e. demand and supply. What Aaron was doing today was exactly what the Academy wanted to prevent rich students from doing. He was taking full advantage of knowing about the upcoming events. Aaron thought of trying his luck in the auction event. He would have a better chance of trying his luck in the upcoming event than getting the technique right here from the receptionist. He might still get what was being offered to him currently. Even in the case the auction gets over and he doesn't find a better, more compatible technique for himself. Even if he didn't know about the items and techniques getting auctioned in the event, Aaron was sure they would be a tad better and a bit cheaper than what he could get from Novice's treasury. No sir. I will hold on to these MERPs for now. Aaron finally decided to deny the offer. He bowed and left the Novice's treasury. The receptionist could only look at Aaron's departing figure with his now narrowed eyes. Chapter 75, Fine-Tuning. The day was going to set when Aaron was done with his business in the Novice's treasury. Aaron had a hearty supper in the canteen before heading to his dorm room. He needed to relearn the spells he had bought. That's right. Aaron had already learned these spells in his past timeline. He had selected the same spells because it would be easy for him to execute them because of his previous familiarity. Aaron remembered the spells just fine. But he bought the spell scrolls so that he could explain their origins when he executes them in front of the students. He would be able to cast them without having to worry about coming up with explanations. Aaron locked the door behind him and sat cross-legged on his bed. He first opened the spell scroll of Rayo, the spell he was most familiar with. He analyzed the mana pathways and mana points that needed to be activated in sequence inside his body for the spell to get activated. Primary mana pathways will be created as soon as the ranker steps into the F rank. These mana pathways can be assumed as veins through which mana gets circulated inside the body. These mana pathways draw mana from the mana core located below the ranker's navel. They are interconnected at a specific distance and interval, where the mana gets accumulated before it travels any further. These points of intersection where the mana accumulation takes place are called mana points. The mana points are found in abundance inside a ranker's body. They only grow in quality and quantity as the ranker ranks up. The F-rank entity is only privy to the most elementary form of these mana veins and mana points. That's why the whole circuit consisting of these two aspects is called the primary mana pathway system while the ranker is in low ranks. A spell describes a specific way and sequence with which a ranker is needed to circulate his mana inside the mana veins. Certain mana points get activated as the previously accumulated mana starts to travel to the next mana point in the mana circuit or get dispersed. And the now empty space is taken over by a new deposition of the mana drawn from the mana core. The caster needs to make sure that only the mana points mentioned in the spell scrolls are activated and other mana points don't react to the circulation of mana inside the mana veins. They also need to ensure that mana dispersion occurs at specific mana points while the remaining mana points send the accumulated mana inside the mana circuit again. The dispersed mana brings forth the required effect intended by the spell while the mana that gets circulated keeps it powered up in case it is a prolonged cast. The mana circulation will take place even when the spell doesn't need to be maintained over a period. It's just that a ranker will face less trouble if he doesn't need to maintain the spell. Any minute failure in sequencing and execution might result in the spell not getting cast at all. Or it can end up in a skewed spell effect. In worst cases, the ranker can feel some side effects due to their mana pathways and or mana points getting injured due to improper execution. F-rank spells were easiest to get accustomed to because they were based on the primary mana pathway system. A ranker had few mana pathways and points to worry about. So the casting took less time and there was less room for errors. Generally, a ranker would be able to learn to cast a spell within 2-3 days if the spell was of the same element as their elemental affinity. The further the element of the spell was from the caster's elemental affinity, the more were chances of the caster not mastering the spell even after a long time, the spell getting mis-executed, or in the caster getting injured in the worst case. That's why it was necessary to choose the ranking technique and spells according to one's elemental affinity. The synchronicity in elemental affinity would result in the spell quickly getting mastered by the ranker, with enhanced output and efficient usage of the limited mana storage. Aaron already knew about the mana pathways and mana points needed to get activated to execute a Rayo beam. He closed his eyes and confirmed the sequences mentioned in the spell scroll are in sync with what he remembered. Aaron opened his eyes suddenly and activated the mana points needed to get activated for the spell with utmost precision. It took just a moment before a straight purple-blue beam emerged from the tip of his right index finger. He maintained the 4-foot-long beam and observed its effectiveness. The blue beam had tiny tongues of lightning surrounding it. It looked like it had taken a solid form. But one could see that it was still ethereal upon closer inspection. The beam was less than 0.5 centimeters in diameter, making it highly penetrable. It could cut or tear through a thick wooden log or a small rock like they were made of papers. But it worked most devastatingly on one's flesh. Aaron could control the beam's diameter and length by tweaking the flow of mana inside his mana circuit. The beam's penetration power would be at its maximum if Aaron kept its length under 3 to 4 feet while narrowing its diameter as much as he could. Aaron knew the rankless people and beasts couldn't threaten him anymore with just this spell alone. The body of a rankless entity was extremely fragile as it wasn't imbued in mana. Rayo could easily cut a rankless person from head to toe vertically in a straight line without facing many obstructions. Rayo's use wasn't limited to the beam deployment alone. It came with a dagger art that could enhance the penetration power of a ranker's dagger. Aaron needed to slightly change the activation sequencing of mana points to make the dagger imbue in Rayo's coating. The dagger's edge will have streams of lightning dancing on it. Plus, there were other variants of Rayo that Aaron wasn't used to yet. He had focused on potion making at the start of his academic journey in his previous timeline. The F-rank elemental spells that he had practiced unrelated to the potion making were limited in number. Even the spells Aaron had just gotten in this timeline were the same spells that had accompanied him at the beginning of his berserker journey. He had practiced them when he was a berserker, so it felt different when he executed the Rayo now. He felt it was lacking in output even when it showed unbelievable penetration power from a rankless perspective. A berserker class was straightforward. The berserker could use the most spells of close combat expert or many other compatible classes. The ranking technique of a berserker would help them pump up the spell's effects. And the effects would only multiply after the consumption of the berserker potions acting as the external power sources. This was the relation between a berserker and a close combat expert. A close combat expert is what one would get after they make a berserker skip on steroids. The ex-berserker would then have to focus on close combat skills and points of impact instead of cranking up the raw power to the maximum. This cranking up of raw power was what made the berserker's combat technique different from that of a close combat expert. The spell's effects would extend in range and power due to the berserker's way of executing them. That allowed the berserker to remain at a distance from their enemies while they focused on normal spells that acted as AoEs. So a berserker didn't need to get close to their opponents to beat them, unlike a close combat expert. That's why the founder of LA and renowned berserker of his generation, Ivor Ironside, chose to become a close combat expert after he experienced an incurable injury. That injury forced him to let go of the path of a berserker. But Ivor wasn't willing to start from scratch. So he opted for the path of a close combat expert at the cost of regressing in his ranking journey. The regression wasn't that heavy due to the path of a berserker and that of a close combat expert didn't have much conflict between them. After that, the bearer of the title Lionheart became equally famous in the path of a close combat expert. This is the reason LA focuses the most on three paths: berserker, close combat expert, and Pote-Wunner. The directly proportional relationship between a berserker and a close combat expert had given Aaron the confidence he needed to change his class in this timeline while keeping the advantages of his previous experiences almost intact. He knew he would master the path of a close combat expert eventually for this exact reason. He had realized that his lightning element and his inherent nature of speed were more compatible with the finesses of a close combat expert than the wild nature of a berserker. Aaron knew the seeming lack of power came from him not being a berserker anymore. This was the spell's original effect without it getting enhanced by the path and powers of a berserker. Aaron needed to adjust his battle style according to his new reality. Aaron then spent the night doing the same with the rest of the spells and confirmed that he could execute the spells without having to worry about casting failures. He would scare Jake with his learning speed if the latter came to know that he had mastered 4 spells in one night. Only when he was assured that the spell execution had no problem did he sleep post-midnight. Aaron skipped his homeroom classes and decided to pay a visit to Novice's training center. It housed private training rooms for novice rankers. The training rooms were big enough for rankers to cast any of their spells. The rooms would come with special equipment to measure the output of the spells if the ranker was willing to pay more in MERPs. There were also other services available, but that came with their own MERPs costs. Aaron went towards a counter and booked a plain room for himself without any services or add-ons. The no add-on booking would cost him 30 merit points per hour. Aaron booked the private room for 10 hours today and 10 hours tomorrow. But Aaron didn't care much about the lost MERPs when he had so much to gain from his trip to the sanctuary. He needed to fine-tune his basic combat prowess, his spells, and his E-rank strengthening with Reen's help. The private room had cost him 480 MERPs, but it had given him the privacy he needed to do all that he had planned. Aaron spent the 2 days training in the private room. He got used to the spells. He still carried his habits from being a berserker, so his new battling style had many flaws. It neither looked like a berserker's or a close combat expert's way of doing things. But it was the best he could do for now without the guidance of an expert. Aaron used his ID stone to unlock the giant door and got out of the private room. He was sweaty all over, bruised, battered, and exhausted. But he had a smile on his face. Aaron was finally ready to visit the sanctuary tomorrow. Chapter 76, Levine de Montmorency. Aaron woke up early the next day. He got ready and wore all the F-rank gears Nina had given him. Jake caught him in the living room and was surprised to see the latter in combat mode. "Bruh, where are you going this early in the morning? That too in a get-up like that? The intra-class war still has 4 days remaining, you know. And homeroom classes aren't that bad. Plus, they are free. You'll not lose anything if you attend them." "I'll lose my time though," Aaron thought to himself. But he didn't say it out loud. He just informed Jake about his departure to the sanctuary. "I'm aware of that, Jackie. It's just that I've decided to accept some missions from Bisank. Shouldn't take me more than 2 days." "Oh. Alright then. Speaking of Bisank, do you know Ken Riverine from our class of 1/C got beaten up by unknown assailants yesterday? Rumor has it that he had accepted low-level missions from the Bisank that the senior students were eyeing. The guy has been hammered badly and is currently admitted into the academy's infirmary. Almost the entire first-year influential lot is standing behind Ken now. A lot of renowned first-year students have used their advantage of getting prioritized for low-level missions and started accepting them after finding out about Ken's serious condition. It is to make a statement to the senior students that they can't just bully us first-years. But the seniors seem to only focus on Ken for now. They are often seen near the infirmary as if to scare Ken some more than they already might have. I don't know what the guy did to piss off the seniors like this. But neither side is going to back out now. Especially the upcoming inter-year ranking war between first and second years is going to get heated up more than usual. The academy is staying true to its stance and playing neutral. It has basically made it clear that the students would have to sort out the mess that they had created. It won't intervene and play as a mediator. Ken has a lot of allies and enemies after just 3 days into the academy. Can you believe it? The name Riverine is enough to rile up the masses, I tell you. You must have applied for Bisank after this event as well, I reckon. Although the seniors aren't targeting any other first years, it is better to be safe than sorry. So you might want to stay alert about any possible ambush in the forest." Jake saw a radiant smile forming on Aaron's face after he told him about the latest and most gossiped about event among the first years these days. He was about to ask the latter why he seemed happy about the news but was faced with a sudden request from him. "Yeah, Jackie, I'll be careful. Don't worry about Mr. Protagonist. He'll be fine on his own. Meanwhile, do me a favor, alright? Go to the Unveiling lab for the first years and see if there's a notice about Levine starting her lectures or not. Levine. The Levine de Montmorency? Why do you want to attend that hag's Unveiling classes? From what I've heard about her, her MERP charges are high per lecture. And she is very serious when it comes to any matter related to potions. They say that Edward Jenner is a much better choice than any of the Potioners available in the academy for first years. First, he is the in charge of the first year's potion lab. Second, Sienna Slughorn has decided to join his classes. You already know about the girl's family background. Who doesn't know about the Slughorn potions? A lot of students from our class as well as the students from other classes have decided to follow in her footsteps. Why don't we join Edward Jenner's lectures too? Edward Jenner. The same lab in charge who was in cahoots with Sienna in Aaron's previous timeline. The butcher knew that this timeline was no different in that department. The old him would have thought like Jake and opted for Edward's classes. But he was not old him anymore. Jackie, if you want us to be learning Potioning together, we can't even think about joining Edward's classes ever. Trust me on this. Let's just say the guy is bad news and would someday lure a calamity on himself and his students. Jake could feel Aaron was being serious. What Aaron said sounded less like a prediction and more like a prophecy. Aaron had exuded the exact seriousness when he told him and his father that they should stop interacting with Jason Storm. At least till they complete their trip to the city of Lion Hearts. He knew exactly what happened after that. Therefore Sullivan Jr. decided to trust Aaron this time too. Long sigh. Alright. I'll check out the lab and find out about Montmorency's classes. Someday, we'll sit with mugs full of root beers in our hands and you'll have to tell me from where you get such news. You know this, right? Anyway, I'm getting late for Ace Julia's classes. Most of us guys attending her lectures don't care about illusions and shit. But we sure like looking at her figure getting seen through semi-revealing clothing during her lectures. Hee. Jake attempted to entice Aaron into attending the homeroom classes but it was in vain. The duo bid adieu to each other in a hurry and went their separate ways after leaving their dorm house. The sanctuary was a few hours away from the first year's dorm township region. Aaron had to use Blitz's steps a few times to get there. Not only did it make him get there faster but also allowed him to practice the spell while moving to his destination. The academy had deployed an energy shield around its borders. But the sanctuary did not get included in that protected region. This was the deal with the Amazons. The academy would keep their rights over their portion of the beast sanctuary intact without having to deploy the energy shield around the forest. The Amazons would be allowed an unhindered entry. And in return, the students would not be prosecuted if they got into the land protected by the Amazons. Therefore, LA had the Department of Bizank create a checkpost to allow its students to enter or exit the beast sanctuary. It would keep track of the number of students and their status in the forest. And would deploy rescue or investigation parties if any emergency arises. This post would also serve as a contact and connection the academy had with the Amazons. So naturally, LA employed the Amazon it had in its ranks as its representative to make that connection smoother. Good day, Miss Air. Adapt Marla. Looking as stunning as ever, I might add. I'm here to enter the forest for my missions. Part 3 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.